Welcome to Veronica Live, and I am here with Statesman John Salak, and we have a big show planned for you today. Shortly, we're going to be joined by former Congressman Geoff Davis. He is back to talk to us again. He was a congressman in Kentucky, I think almost 12 years, and he now is fully residing in Florida. I had a long conversation with him yesterday, John, for more than an hour, and he's been a guest before. He's literally amazing. He's a West Point grad. He is great friends with General Petraeus, and he is just such a world visionary and thinker. And he has some thoughts on the election.
I know, and the last time we talked to him, we covered the world, with Ukraine and Israel and everything, and I'm trying to get some updates on those. So, looking forward to talking to him.
Here he is. So let me merge him in here. Good morning, Congressman.
Hey there. How are you?
Welcome back to Veronica Live. And I've got Congressman Geoff Davis on the phone. He served in Kentucky. For how many years did you serve up in that great state?
8 years.
Excellent.
8 years.
And I've got Statesman John Salak is joined us this morning, too, as my wingman. And we have so much to talk about, Congressman. I know yesterday I talked with you for an hour, and I could have spent hours because you're so worldly. And I guess let's just kick it off with one of the topics that you moved me the most as we were getting ready for the show was Ukraine. And you really feel that we need to support Ukraine. And I want you to tell us why, because I think we've given, I don't know if the number is $160 billion. It's so much money we've sent that direction. And why should Americans continue to support Ukraine, sir?
Well, first of all, one thing to clarify, the European Union has given significantly more humanitarian financial aid by order of magnitude over what the United States has done, even though their military assistance has been, somewhat less, largely due to a smaller industrial base. But the one thing that's a fact that's getting missed in this, and I'm so disappointed in fellow Republicans in particular that are parroting a lie that says we're sending money, to Zelensky's bank account or to, this corrupt official or that one. The reality is that the vast majority of the money that was appropriated previously in support of Ukraine was going to create U.S. jobs and help us restart our industrial base for munitions in particular, which is in critical condition right now, considering the likelihood of a peer-to-peer war. And forgetting for a moment some of the dysfunction of the current administration, the decision to support Ukraine is in fact the right one from a strategic standpoint. You see an alignment, not unlike, it's not the same. So, but history does echo to paraphrase the statement or rhyme. And, we have an alignment of authoritarian powers that do not have the interests of free people. They do not focus on freedom and justice. They do not focus on truth. They're driven largely by misinformation in terms of how they subjugate their people. And they've created external PR operations, just like the 1930s. We see it today. We literally had people standing up at CPAC saying that their objective was to do away with democracy, period. And that authoritarian structures are more effective. And the last time that we went through that in any kind of momentum in this country was in the period between 1937 and 1941. And it took the shock of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor to wake America up to the fact that we have threats in the world. And as I said in July when I was on, you have essentially a minority of people in the world that live in free nations, but we control the vast majority of economic power and can use that for good. And in this case, having spent, I joined the Army nearly 48 years ago, but the one thing that I would tell you is the threat from Russia is very real. And when it ignited was really in 2007 at the Munich Security Conference, when Putin laid the gauntlet down of what his strategic objective was to reconstitute some form of the Russian empire. And he's taken steps to do that. He began with his toe in the water with Georgia. He's certainly committed endless atrocities in Chechnya. The Russian army is committing atrocities as part of their doctrine. And they are a threat to the West, and they have threatened NATO partners. They've threatened Western partners. And he's even threatened a nuclear attack on the United States. So, when we were young, let's say in the 1980s, the administration would have reacted somewhat differently across all party lines. And right now, we are in a time between what's happening in the Middle East, largely driven by Iran, who's a second-rate player, but you have two demographically dying countries that are desperate for their leaders' personal gratification in China and in Russia that are watching the West, that do have doctrinal designs, and defeating the Russian army right now is one of the best things that we can do. It costs less than 2% of our defense, of our budget, and it doesn't put one American boot on the ground. The problem is if we let this fall, eventually that we will be in a conflict that we're not ready for right now. And I think that, going back to the late 1930s and seeing the challenges that we had, in our country on preparing the military for World War II was a very dicey thing because, rightly we want to be very wary of foreign entanglements. But as one thing that I'll say is Winston Churchill said, the only thing that's worse than fighting a war with allies is fighting one without one. And we're in a very dangerous place if we disconnect from the world because we are that dominant democratic power.
Congressman, what do you make of the Washington mindset? And this is what my objection is to the Ukraine, is we're not all in. I mean, we're trying to fight a war and basically tying one hand behind their back, and we're doing the same thing in Israel, with the Israelis and Hamas, saying, well, you can't fight the war you need to win. And it's like the Biden people seem to think, let's fight to a stalemate, which is, to me, crazy.
Well,
war is to break.
I think you can apply that to both parties, frankly, to factions in both parties. And I'll begin with my party first. Mike Johnson, after the atrocities that happened in Israel, and I served in Israel in the United States Army. The one thing that I would tell you, I've had rocks thrown at me in Gaza. I've had people try to kill me before and different things I've done over there. But the one thing that I'll tell you is Mike Johnson's response, and this is heinous from an American leader who claims to be a Christian, that when he brought forth his bill, it was automatically bad politics, no-go. We're going to cut $15 billion from the IRS. Well, even though I'd like to cut $15 billion from the IRS, he guaranteed, either from legislative ignorance or just playing local politics, that bill would never see the light of day. So here we are, months later, and we haven't provided that assistance. In the same vein, the discussions about Ukraine, and I'm going to speak not as a former member of Congress, but as a Christian. If you are not a Russian Orthodox Christian in the occupied parts of Ukraine, you are persecuted, atrocities have been committed. There are hospitals that are filled in Ukraine and also in Poland with people who've had the most horrifying atrocities done to them. Old men, children of all ages, down to toddlers, and women who've been so violently assaulted sexually that they require major surgery to be reconstructed. Now, whether he's been briefed on that or not, I don't know, but he has been briefed on the gravity of the threat. And so you have a problem in our party with misinformation, frankly, that's coming from the top with Donald Trump, who has no grasp of history. And not that everything that he says is wrong, but he doesn't understand the nature of this conflict and has a really weird kind of relationship in terms of how he perceives Putin, who is candidly still a KGB agent. Over to the Biden administration, I'll put this into a context. I might not have gone on national television and said this as a member of Congress, but I'll say this now, quoting one of my favorite chiefs of staff of a very prominent conservative member of the Senate, who said that Washington, D.C. has the highest number of per capita, highly intelligent, over-credentialed, over-educated, stupid people in the United States. and because of that, that doesn't mean they're bad people. But these are folks who've not served in the military. They've not been downrange. They've not started businesses. They haven't understood how to take risks. Most of them have never been, high school or college athletes. And, understanding the idea of conflict and competition, and life is not everybody gets a trophy. And we're going to affirm you because of how you feel so you can be your authentic self. The reality is that competition and the protections of our freedom is a brutal business to maintain what we have here. And the administration had bad information, I think, initially, but was utterly feckless over the first summer of 2022 in terms of accelerating the assistance. I'll bring you to the ATACMS long-range Army tactical missile. By not giving them that capability and dithering, frankly, for nearly 10 months after the war began, assured Russia that they had that additional time after Kharkiv was retaken and the initial momentum in September of 2022 gave them literally 8-9 months to build a classic Soviet Warsaw Pact style mine-strewn defense in depth that was going to be very difficult to penetrate regardless of whose army it was that was trying to do it. And so we, sadly, as an administration, have contributed to that problem. I understand the issues with measured risk and not wanting to escalate too much to create further provocation. There's concern about, what Russia might do in a truly desperate situation. But the reality is, and I'm saying this to every listener here that sees somehow that the Russian army is some kind of great entity, they are untrained, they're an untrained rabble, they're poorly led, there's no trust within the system. It's essentially a mob. They've adapted in many ways technologically, as many authoritarian systems will do. But with their overwhelming superiority at the beginning of this war and throughout, they have not been able to move the needle. And we needed to support that. And the thing about ATACMS that is so troubling to me is we're getting ready to demilitarize, essentially dispose of about 5,000 of these missiles to replace them with an even more lethal system that's on the way. And so, my view on that is we don't have any loss on this. To give those types of systems, we should have given them a year ago. We need to give them now. And I think the one thing that I've seen really an awakening across the spectrum among people who pay attention to military policy. And there are many very prominent members of Congress in the media, that see themselves as influencers who make these disparaging statements, but they have no clue historically. They're not policymakers. They're not legislators. They're just simply posturing statements on the gravity of this situation. And, I think it's no different than when we were able to lend the British in 1940 some old destroyers, airplanes, vehicles, things like that, help them get to the point that they could win the Battle of Britain and ultimately stabilize the situation, with the inevitabilities of what was coming in the Second World War. And, I think that appeasing Putin is a mistake. We need to defeat him. And I'll leave you with one thing. Sorry, I'm talking too long.
No, you're
but
perfect.
The German general staff in World War II was absolutely concerned that if the United States joined the war, that they would be defeated because they did not have the industrial power. Russia understands the same thing. The German general staff knew that once we got a foothold in Europe, they would be defeated. Trump made an ignorant statement. I did my honors work actually studying tactical conflict in the Eastern Front in World War II. The Russians basically did meat assaults then like they do now, but the reason the Soviet Union was able to beat the Germans in the East in World War II was twofold. One was the two-front war that we advanced in the Mediterranean and in Europe when we invaded France and pushed them back. And the second thing that no one's talking about are the 400,000 American trucks, the thousands of airplanes, and the munitions that we sent with no strings attached to the Soviet Union to help bolster their forces to be able to move and have a logistical capability that the Germans, frankly, didn't. And now we're looking at a situation with a democracy that's got some challenges, but they want to change the people. I think it's the right thing to do. And it doesn't cost us anything. But I also understand, the mental exhaustion after the 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan that many people in America feel. That feeling was very much alive in the 1930s as people questioned the value of being engaged in World War I.
It's interesting that you bring in the historical perspective. The Lend-Lease was certainly critical. And it was almost, like the Russians were trying to copy the German blitzkrieg tactic. They thought they were going to storm into Ukraine, and then the problem, the Germans, their equipment worked, and the Russians, their stuff obviously broke down and had problems. But what is this escalation? We keep talking about, not, if we give them too much, we're going to escalate. It's a war. The purpose of the war, again, break things and kill people. Okay, and that's how you defeat the enemy. And to sit here and say, well, we're going to have a limited war, there's no such thing. That just means you're playing for a stalemate and then negotiate the outcome, which is never successful.
And Congressman, I want to piggyback on that too, because like these atrocities that you're talking about, the way to win the hearts of Americans is to put this forward. I mean, John and I read news all the time. I have not bumped into that there's hospitals full of, people that have been, I don't know, violated, like you were telling me. I mean, if that gets to the Americans, to me, that changes minds, because people, these are humans.
I agree. I think one thing that I would, posit is the media is not particularly effective in covering anything related to faith.
No,
because the overwhelming majority don't understand it, and that's why you read these weird pieces, trying to to interpret people who are Christians acting in the public space. I'm not a Christian nationalist, by the way. I believe that's heretical, but I'll come back to the fact that we do represent our values when we serve, and they shape our worldview. But as I asked somebody in China who had a master's degree in how to persecute the church from the Ministry of State Security University in Beijing, I asked her, did you ever actually talk to some of these Christians that you're talking about? And she said, why, of course I would never do that. And that's part of the problem is people that are going into the silos here in this country due to social media and, all of the, the constant barrage of information from almost infinite sources that wants to, place itself as authoritative, and most of it's not true. And I wish that this would be out there more. Certainly, in many ministry circles, if you dig into the places where there are ministries that are working in Ukraine and in eastern, the eastern flank of NATO, that they're dealing with these refugees and these traumatized, injured people. You get a very different story. My wife has a friend here in Central Florida who went over on a mission that we helped her with to spend several weeks dealing with refugees just over the Ukrainian border. She came back devastated by what she saw. And I think that, when Zelensky invited former President Trump to come, I wish he would say yes and go, because but I think there are other factors, the why he wouldn't do that at a personal level. But the reality is, I have one of my close friends from West Point who's been in Kyiv since the war started doing humanitarian work. And it's been a constant stream of this. And part of the problem is you have a dysfunctional society in Russia. Russia is a dying country demographically. Our economy is 23 times bigger than Russia's. Us and the NATO economy is over 40 times bigger. And combined, we're quite more than 2 times the size of China economically. Yet we're playing into the hands of these authoritarian leaders who will rattle the saber a little bit, but literally would have no significant chance in open combat against us. And they know that. And I think that we have to come back to a core point, and this is a Putin doctrine, but it's a long time, Soviet KGB kind of a doctrine too. It is called escalate to de-escalate. And so you'll increase the threat, you'll ramp up the threat with the idea that the other side of your adversary thinks that you're going to do something that's going to take this to an unacceptable level, and therefore they back down. That's how we got appeasement, not Soviet, but in Czechoslovakia in the Munich Agreement in 1938, or at the end of 1938, was the British and French, exhausted by World War I. The idea of going to war was extremely unpopular. So Neville Chamberlain was trying to be a pragmatic politician and cut a deal, thinking that Hitler wouldn't go further, where Winston Churchill, who was a much maligned leader and considered crazy for his pronouncements about the threat of Nazism, was proven true, and thus was elevated as the people woke up to a position of leadership to mobilize the country, to another level for war. And frankly, I think that people don't realize, because we have literally nobody in a position of leadership in this country in any institutional setting who lived through that time in the Second World, the 1930s and the 1940s, to understand those lessons that were learned. And if you look at the Reagan administration versus, what you might call Trump policy of some of the people who are echoing or auditioning for, roles in national security positions in a potential future administration, it's like all these lessons are ignored, and there's not an understanding of the gravity of these threats. And so we need to take steps to do several things. And I think this is what often gets lost as we live our lives day to day, and we're dealing with family and job and friends and church and social groups and things like that, is that maintaining open shipping, freedom of the seas, freedom of trade, and being able to secure that is a huge, huge job creator in the United States. And we are an international trading society. And so, for example, in my old district, the 4th District of Kentucky, across from Cincinnati, basically from Louisville to the West Virginia border, a lot of it's rural, but literally in that district, 40% of the jobs in my district were directly tied to international trade. And so if we lose that, whether it's through our ignorance to allow adversaries to rise up, or we impose maybe well-meaning but really economically dumb tariffs on our adversaries, then or our economic competitors, then what you end up with is exactly the opposite of what you want, and you create economic hardship as well as increasing the threat to the nation. That's exactly what happened in the 1930s, ironically.
Well, how do you blend the Reagan part of peace through strength, and his position was, we're going to build a military second to none, and you try to take us on. When we tell you to stop, we mean stop. Otherwise, we're going to come and clean your clock. And Trump's a little different. Trump's a transactional person. He's a business guy. He thinks of everything as a business deal. That's his mindset. I don't think he, as you point out, he's not thinking strategically or tactically. He's thinking, how do I do a deal with this guy? And those are the terms.
I'll give you a case in point. Lyndon Johnson, who was an extremely effective legislator, maybe we don't agree with his policies, but he was very good at what he did. He misunderstood fundamentally Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. And ironically, Ho Chi Minh's idol, his hero historically, was George Washington. And the OSS leader, Archimedes Patty was this guy's name, in Vietnam, recommended to what was becoming the nascent CIA and back into the State Defense Departments that they find a way to embrace him and redirect his nationalism. He had been trained in the Soviet Union, but he wasn't really a communist in that sense. For the most part, it was much more nationalistic. And Johnson, wanting to prop up the post-Kennedy, post-Diem government, just was convinced he could cut a deal. And he even did things like, well, I can give him water projects and roads and rail and things like that. And the people with the country experience and the cultural experience had a completely different perspective on that. You can't cut a deal. This is an ideological issue related to these people. And for Putin, for Xi Jinping, these are personality cults. North Korea, personality cult. The Iranian leadership ultimately is a personality cult that uses, and they all use a form of religion in the sense of what theologian Paul Tillich called, what is man's ultimate concern, to structure their society around that. And, with Mr. Trump, who claims he's done the greatest things for defense in the history of the country, whatever, what he really did was a significant pay raise to troops, and I'm very grateful for 2 boys on active duty. But the underpinnings of our military institutions and our industrial base, which is so critical to our success in past conflicts and being able to defend this country, doesn't mean we didn't make mistakes. There's been no great country in history that hasn't. But our economic power and our industrial power was at the core of that. And so, we can go on for days talking about things that both parties have done that are wrong. But right now we're making policy decisions, frankly, in both parties that are counterintuitive to good strategic thinking. And going back to your comment about war, Clausewitz said war is politics by other means. And ultimately, if you can't dialogue your way to a solution and one party is intractable, conflict is inevitable, and the way that you prevent that conflict, very simply, is having to paraphrase the Reagan era when I was a young lieutenant or private. Well, actually, I was commissioned by the time Reagan was in, but as a young lieutenant and captain, it's peace through superior firepower. And that's, one of the things that I think gets forgotten about this. We talk about the greatest army in the world, but it's pretty hollow right now.
Well,
that's our ability to.
That's one of my questions too, Congressman, is that it took forever for Biden, to strike back at the Houthis that were sending all of those, strikes against the military, our military. It took him forever. He was thinking about it. And as a soldier, were you not as frustrated as John and I? We've talked about this multiple times. You strike. You don't wait and tell people you're thinking about it.
I remember giving the brief on the Libya operation in 1986 to a whole bunch of pilots the day after it happened for what talking points that we had, from our chain of command. And it was an exciting moment. And I think whether it was Grenada, which I'm glad there wasn't social media for that because it was a lot more complicated in, exposing flaws in our joint operations. But what the Reagan doctrine essentially was putting the gauntlet down that we are going to protect our sovereignty and our sovereign interests. And after the saber rattling of his first few years in power, which I think was necessary when you had people like Brezhnev and probably the most dangerous Soviet premier was Andropov, the former KGB leader who'd literally never been outside the Soviet Union. He turned, and from that position of strength, as Gorbachev came in and was able to negotiate a solution, because Gorbachev understood the economic realities of his country, just like those who, on our side, who were really studying the Soviet Union and understood what was happening economically. We're in a similar situation now. And yeah, it was immensely frustrating. My view when the first Houthi put a missile towards an American ship was, some people were going to die. If the Russians have put a device into the, have intention to, or have put a device into orbit that could unleash an EMP on the West and have devastating economic consequences and technological and social, we need to destroy it. It's an act of war. And I, just as an aside, in my stream of consciousness here, I commend my friend Mike Turner for doing what he did when he released that information at the beginning of last week, forced the administration to address this. And the irony is, what did members of the Freedom Caucus do? They turn around and condemn him, saying that he's showing reckless disregard for information. I'm like, my God, this stuff is real. And these people who play at this in politics, no different than the people who stormed the Capitol, and they're making this into some kind of peaceful rally now. I think that when you encounter violence the first time, and I have, and maybe you all have, you realize that this is not some kind of puppies and rainbows storybook reality. Our freedom comes at a great price because of men and women who have been willing to confront that, imperfectly as we do as countries. But that reality and that knowledge is necessary for maintaining order and the protection of our interests. And the reaction that we need to have, this is not, wanton run off to war or anything like that, but it's a clear knowledge that if you pose a threat, we're going to deal with it. And this passiveness is very dangerous on any number of levels, because in the Defense Department right now, they're more focused on climate change and gender and social policy than on actual war fighting. And we're seeing that in spades across the services.
I'm glad you brought up Representative Mike Turner, because I was going to ask you about that. We'd covered that a couple of weeks ago when the story came out. And one thing, I've been reading Aviation Week and space technology for decades. ASAT programs are not new, okay? So there's stuff about, they can shoot missiles up and blow our satellites up, and it's like, yeah, they've been able to do that for decades, okay? No big deal. Why suddenly is there this panic, from Washington over the nukes? The EMP stuff, that's not new either. I mean, there's a congressional committee on EMP, I think, about 10 years ago. Read the report. you want to read something frightening, read that report about what an EMP attack would do to this country in 30 days.
Actually, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was in classified hearings on this very subject, and the Chinese killed one of their own satellites to prove a point back in 2008 or 9. And I remember making some snarky comments to the charge from the Chinese embassy when he was over in the Capitol one day. But the reality was they were testing a system, but also sending a message. These systems have been around. I chaired a closed panel in 2005 on emerging nuclear threats, the full spectrum. It was a heavy focus on Iran, rogue operations out of Russia and North Korea principally, and got into even a lot more detail that unfortunately we can't have that dialogue on the show right now. But needless to say, these threats are very real. And we don't have to, many of these things don't have to be handled out in the open, not any different than families having closed discussions as opposed to having all their dirty laundry out in the middle of a restaurant somewhere. Back channel diplomacy can be very powerful in terms of sending messages, regardless of the saber rattling by somebody on the other side. And, in this situation, it was very clear. I just say this now. It was very clear the administration wasn't taking proactive steps, aggressive steps, as Putin was saber rattling, and then they've made these statements. He's talked about other weapon systems that didn't exist, that they've developed as kind of a threat, going back to escalate to de-escalate.
Yep.
I think that the gravity, because this technology does exist, the gravity of that kind of a threat cannot be ignored. And I think Mike Turner was actually, and I've known him for 22 years, he's a good man, and he's a great legislator, and one of the few true strategic thinkers in the Congress. And I'll just say that unabashedly. Now, there's some people that, want to believe conspiracy theories about our national security apparatus. I can't help them. But the reality was, the reason that he did this was because action was not being taken to cut this off from becoming a potential escalate to de-escalate threat where we would hold back from doing the things that we needed to do to, A, protect our homeland, and B, to call out this threat. And so we're in a difficult time. And the sad thing, I think, and this is another reason I think Mike did this, our current president does not have the capacity to go in front of the country and give a persuasive, heartfelt speech to tell America and persuade America on why a particular course of action is necessary. And not to get into some of the complicated after-the-fact issue, think about how we all felt after 9/11 happened. And when the president came on the air that night and the message that he gave of reassurance, of hope, that justice would be done, and that we were going to, address this. And in the same way, his speech to the joint session of Congress a couple of weeks later was immensely powerful on this, on that very fact. And that kind of leadership, I think people hunger for. Part of the reason Obama was successful politically was he had that, regardless of the nature of the policies that probably the three of us would largely disagree with. The fact was he was a persuasive communicator, and Joe Biden has never been that. His most recent message that was put out, I think there were over 15 different cuts to it, where they get 3 or 4 words out, and then you'd have like this picture break, and then there'd be more words and a picture break. That's not the kind of leadership we need right now, and we don't have it in the Defense Department. And frankly, that's a challenge, and we don't have it in the State Department either.
I'm just curious on the Defense Department in particular. Do you think our leadership, and I go to General Miley here in particular, when he called his Chinese counterpart and told him, don't worry about Trump sending nukes, because I'll countermand the order. Is that some kind of, I mean, what's the perception of the Russians and the Chinese and stuff to our military acting like that?
Well, these kind of conversations happened all the time during the Cold War. And in fact, we all look at the missiles of October in 1962 as like the greatest threat to our country. Probably one of the greatest dangers that came was in 1983, 84. I think it was 84, but my brain is old now as a Medicare member now. But the one thing,
we don't believe you, Congressman.
Hey, but what I'll say though is, in Soviet strategic missile forces in that time frame had an anomaly in their software, and these kind of things happen. You need to have a human being in the loop. This is before the concept of Skynet. And all of this came out with the Terminator, which came out a year or so later in the theaters. But the big reality though was their system, their command system in the tank, or their version of our Pentagon room that we call the tank, suggested or declared that we were in fact launching a major nuclear strike on the Soviet Union, something that was never remotely part of our doctrine, even though there were Soviet leaders that chose or wanted to operate based on false assumptions that we had malign intent towards them. But the bigger question here was when that happened, and how we found out about it was seeing them going to effectively our equivalent of DEFCON 1. We escalate to DEFCON 1 immediately because they're going to DEFCON 1. I remember when the alert call came out, I was like, oh my gosh. And because nobody knew what was going on. And the reality is, that came down, the solution to that to prevent World War III came down to an American general officer on duty in the Pentagon reaching out and making a phone call to a Russian counterpart. And so I think we can be rational and say that President Trump was suggesting some things that were not appropriate post-election 2020. And it was in discussions about essentially starting armed conflict against other potential adversaries or peers. That kind of a conversation that reaches out and says, hey, here's what's going on, if it's considered credible, can be a steam valve to let pressure out. But and these back channel dialogues become very important where you can maintain them. I mean, here's a fact on Iraq. When Anthony Zinni was the CENTCOM commander before Tommy Franks took over, and then, we had 9/11 and all the rest of the history, his command in CENTCOM was in dialogue with Saddam's generals for years about catastrophic collapse of Iraq and what steps would be taken to maintain civil order and maintain security and also not give the Iranians an advantage. And that led to the development of Op Plan 100398, 98 being one of the years that Zinni was a commander, and one of the early years, in fact, that calculated what would be necessary to, stabilize in Iraq. And that became the basis for ultimately what our war plans were going to be. And so dialogue is important.
I mean, are you not frustrated because you're talking about we need a leader that can talk to the American people, and also when leaders are leading and America's number one, then we can help deter these things, Congressman. And I know when we were corresponding, you in the email after we were, I don't know, you sent me one of the emails was like, POTUS, the race is potentially a toss-up for November, and Biden's obviously not running this country. We need a leader, because I just feel like since he's been in, America's so weak, and we've got to win. And I know Trump's not everybody's favorite.
Here's a secret. America was weak before militarily in terms of peer-to-peer strategic fights, and for all the bluster and everything. I mean, I made this comment to you. I think in a sense, it's like God has given America over to itself, because the vast majority of the population of this country wants neither one of them in the White House.
Right.
And, when you get 60-70% majorities say that, that's a pretty good indicator of the frustration of the American people. And as much as I'll put it this way, because I knew many of these folks who went into the Trump administration were what I would typically call normal Republicans, normal small government, lower taxes, strong national defense, maintain managed trade, control immigration. The people who brought about the majority of the successes legislatively were Republicans like us, who weren't given over to these weird conspiracy theories. And, for example, for all the attacks on Mitch McConnell, the only reason Donald Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices was, guess what? Because Senator McConnell has been working on that process to gain control of the court a conservative influence on the court to stop the legislating from the bench since he was a young senator in the mid-1980s. And, the reality is now we have the person who's going to be our nominee, very clearly, who's come out and said he's going to do away with the Marxists and the globalists and, whatever. And I'm kind of like, what the heck is a globalist? If you can't be president of the United States and not believe in the value of international business. I mean, my God, he has lots of international interests overseas. But the reality is that engaging in name calling like that you're going to run a revenge administration of retribution. And I'm here for you. I am your retribution. That is not that automatically that's a guarantee that you're going to have real problems if that person is successful. And think about this. Politics is the art of addition. It's adding a coalition to gain and maintain a majority that will support the policies that you are trying to incrementally or in, Hail Mary passes maybe legislatively, but you're trying to move a policy agenda requires you to broaden out that base of support. And as I think I said back in July, all strategy is a math problem. Whether we're talking about our international situation, but I come back to Congress, it's a math problem. It's 218 if you have everybody in the House at 435. It's 60 in the Senate for a non-budget reconciliation or non-confirmation vote, and it's one president who will sign that legislation. And you've got to align those stars. If that's the pipeline that all policy has to pass through. And so in order to get there, it's actually very helpful to not insult the people whose votes you need. And I think that becomes part of the root of this issue because we're talking about personalities and crazy things that are getting said, frankly, by both candidates, but we're ignoring the actual policy realities of the situation that we're dealing with and what it's going to take to get us out of that. And so before I get off of this, I'll leave you with one other thing. One of the things that cemented the Great Depression and probably contributed massively to propelling Europe into dysfunction and the ultimate rise of the National Socialists and fascism in Italy, to the degree it was in the 1930s, not when Mussolini started out in the 20s, was in fact the Smoot-Hawley trade agreement that was forced through the Congress in 1931, I believe, that basically closed the doors to America by putting excessive tariffs on our trading partners. And what that ended up doing was everybody went into the tank, including us, for a decade, and really until the start of the war. And so I think we have to, again, there's a reason that the post-World War II leaders took the steps that they did, because they had that experience of making those massive mistakes in the 1930s and the 1920s and understanding the reality of where we are. And I think the great lesson that both Democrats and Republicans and what I'll call the center-right, center-left leaders took away from that, growing up, living, serving through that experience, was the fact that we have to, as I'd say as an old Ranger, you have to patrol forward and aggressively. You can't wait for something to come to you. You got to gain and maintain contact so that you can take steps as necessary or shape the environment in which you're going to function.
So, Congress, is it fixable? To me, I agree with your assessment that the military is weak and it's unfocused. And, the good example that you may be familiar with, the Army recently canceling their future vertical lift program. Yeah, $2.5 billion down the drain. The Navy retiring ships that, are less than 10 years old, trying to retire them because they don't know what to do with them. The Air Force, canceling F-35 buys. I mean, there just seems to be this dysfunction in the military. How do we correct that in Washington? Is it just the fact we don't have the leadership in the civilian side, or is the military just leaderless also? As far as the general officer corps go.
Well, I think there are a lot of excellent general officers, but there are also a lot of people who are what I'll call businessmen and women who weren't particularly political until they, got their first or second star and saw big lights. And, I personally experienced this in November. I had to brief a 3-star active duty general in one command who started opining to me about how he was totally committed and knew the Army would be all electric in 10 years.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm thinking, and
Oh my
I looked at this
gosh.
guy, and I looked at my first reaction, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I looked at this guy in his Ranger tab and his combat infantryman badge, and I'm
Oh
thinking,
my.
did we serve in the same army and go to the same school? But the reality is, what he reflected was what the current Secretary of the Army, Secretary Wormuth, is essentially demanding in these senior promotions are people who will bow the knee to the agenda of the administration. And Lloyd Austin did this on an all-hands call with the senior general officer leaders of the Army, all the 3 and 4 stars, in February 2021, and stated that the top 2 priorities of the Defense Department, as the world is unraveling, stated that the top 2 priorities of the Defense Department were climate change and eliminating white supremacy in the military. And that doesn't exist in the military in any proportion compared to what little there is actually out in America writ large. And one general, one 3-star who was on that call, Corps commanders, made a comment, I'm not going to carry that out because it doesn't exist. It's not the right priorities.
So true.
And Austin ripped into him. And the reality was that General said, I'm just going to retire. I'm vested. I'm just going to leave because I won't execute bad policy. Flip side, this type of mismanagement is a challenge. The last general officer who resigned in protest of a presidential decision or directive was Matthew Ridgway in 1956. And that is a problem. And I've had this discussion with numerous Army officers that people choose to stay and say they can make it better. We can look at, situations, no different than the ill-fated walk with the Bible over to the church with Trump back in 2020. That wasn't a good look for the Army on that day. And so we do face challenges, but it can be fixed. The question is I think one of the things we need to do is lower the temperature of the dialogue, so it's not this constant vitriol of extremes, and objectively explain this to people. And it's easier to be a Matt Gaetz who doesn't actually do anything in Washington other than stir crap up. I mean, I've told many young congressmen, and I'm saying this explicitly because of this district that you all are in.
Right.
But one of the things I learned this as a young private in the Army. I learned it as an officer from great NCOs. You have to lead from the front. You have to explain. You have to give orders, but you also want to explain why and what our purpose is and what our mission is. So we are connected to the purpose that's bigger than ourselves. And, in my district, I took some positions legislatively that could be very controversial relative to the equivalent of social media politics at the time, but went out of my way to explain to folks issues that were lightning rod issues. And the response, I'll put it this way at the end, we did a poll about a year before I was done just to kind of see where I was. I'd already made the decision to retire because of my boys getting into high school. But the response was stunning to me, because if I listened to the 40 frequent flyer callers that thought I was part of the one world government or was a crazy right-wing gun-toting Bible-thumping extremist, you'd have thought I was terrible. But I had 90% plus approval ratings among not only the most conservative voters, but Republicans writ large in my district. And I think that's a statement of what we always tried to do. I was on one national talk radio show, and I kept coming back to the facts. And the host, Bill Cunningham, in Cincinnati, has made the comment. He goes, Congressman, you just got too much common sense for talk radio. And I think my making that comment is not bashing talk radio, but I think it's easy to go to the emotional stuff that gets folks stirred up versus the power of that microphone to educate and help people understand the reality of the environment that we're in. And, in our humble way, we tried to do that in Kentucky, but, things come and go.
So, Congressman, I know you wanted to discuss the Freedom Caucus. You had some important things to share with our listeners.
Sure. I'm not a fan, admittedly, and people can join various caucuses. At the end of the day, as one of my friends basically said, this is several years ago, that trying to dissuade an incoming member from joining was you basically give your voting card to folks that don't necessarily have your interest at stake by the way they agree to vote for and against things. And how the Freedom Caucus actually was birthed in 2014 has its roots farther back in the run-up to when we went into the majority. And we saw this in spades after we got into the majority. We had one chamber of the Congress, the House, because of bad candidates that were being nominated. Again, going back to all the crazy rhetoric that will fly around in certain circles, the idea was, oh, well, you've been in for 3 terms, so you're a professional politician. You're really a rhino and a liberal. That's how we lost a seat in Delaware, to a woman who then had to go on TV and claim that she really wasn't a witch. These majorities matter. Controlling these gavels matter. And I'd rather, as I told plenty of people in my very pro-life district, as a pro-life person myself, I would rather see a pro-choice member elected in New England who's a Republican that's going to vote for a conservative speaker who is pro-life than say, oh, no, I can't support anybody who doesn't agree with me 100%. And right after we went into the majority, we began getting attacked by folks like Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, other people of that ilk across the country, saying we didn't have the spine or the guts to do what was necessary. Well, guess what? If I control one chamber and nothing gets to the president's desk without passing through the other chamber, and they're going to kill the bill, and they've got a majority that they can do that, and you got a president that says, I will not sign that legislation, guess what? It's not happening in the form that you're there or that you want, so you have to get the best deal you can. And the group, as it continued to move, started wanting to challenge rule votes. We actually kicked Jim Jordan off the whip team because he was encouraging his staff and the Republican Study Committee to go out and tell members to vote against leadership priorities. Try to run an organization where you got active dissent like that. I mean, people can vote however they want to, but at the end of the day, we have to function as a team to some degree. And so as this morphed, I had left Congress, in 2012 or at the end of 2012, but as this continued into the next Congress, we saw this escalate to a new level where you had these folks challenging rules. One of the things that the public, I didn't understand any of this when I got elected, but what the rules actually do is allows a majority in the House to maintain control of the agenda. If you defeat a rule, you effectively hand the floor to the minority. And that's problematic in itself. And since Mike Johnson has become the speaker, I mean, this is historic. We've had 5 rules defeated, largely by these folks in the Freedom Caucus, where perfect was always going to be the enemy of good and what the possible was. And so as the Freedom Caucus started up then in 2014, what did they do? Their great accomplishment was to remove the most conservative speaker in history. Congratulations. What did that really do for you? And they would attack us. And here's the other thing that you need to understand. They would attack so-called rhino Republicans because we would vote for appropriations bills. Well, guess what? I'm going to vote for an omnibus if I've got constituents in the military whose wives are calling me to wonder if their husbands or their spouses are going to get paid. We're going to do the things that we have to do to continue to govern. And this mythology of just shut the government down and it doesn't matter. Well, guys like Jim Jordan come from 70% Republican districts. They can do pretty much what they want, no different than AOC can do coming from New York City. And the members who make the majorities for both parties come from districts that can go both ways. And so again, I come back to what is now a 4-letter word in Republican circles, but compromise is the currency of the realm in a republic. It always has been. And I think again is we need leaders who can rise up and not simply be performers. I mean, I look at a guy like Matt Gaetz, and I'm just going to say this. You've not done anything legislatively. The military, in terms of an institutional setting, has no respect for you whatsoever. And I know this firsthand from many people in senior leadership positions in the military. But the final point, though, that I would tell you is, so you threaten the speaker who was overwhelmingly elected by your conference, where over 90% of your members support him, and you're going to take him down and effectively help Hakeem Jeffries take down his political adversary. And that's exactly what Matt did. He threw the House into complete chaos. We went through 5 speaker ballots. We elected a speaker who was able to get to the necessary number of votes. He was able to get to a majority on the House floor, barely. And what do we have to show legislatively for it since then? Literally nothing. And I think that, and we're going to lose the House, by the way. You can write that down. The House is probably gone because of this kind of behavior. And the American people hunger for leadership. It's why you've seen this pendulum swing back and forth the last several Congresses.
I'm curious if you've seen the Politico article that came out a couple days ago. It's called "A Guide to the 5 GOP Factions Roiling the House."
Yes,
it's one of the stories in our afterburner stack of stuff, and it's interesting you mentioned the Rules Committee because that's one of the groups that was identified, and they're Politico being somewhat leftist. Obviously took a hit.
You're understating that. You're understating that. We can get into their gender terminology policy is insane.
Yeah.
But I'll refer to you both as they. How's that?
Okay.
We can talk
Please don't.
What's interesting, they didn't mention Matt Gaetz at all in the article, which really surprised me. But they did mention Chip Roy, and I'm sure you probably know Tom Massey from Kentucky, and Ralph Norman as the three conspirators that are effectively defeating Johnson's policies by controlling the Rules Committee.
I think when Kevin did something that was very shrewd. When Thomas came in behind me, he was a bit of a bomb thrower through his first several terms in the Congress, and was sort of I think he styled himself in wanting to be the next Ron Paul. Always voting no on stuff and, potentially not being a particularly effective legislator. But, that's regardless. The people spoke. They voted for who they wanted to. And, he's in the position. But one thing I want to commend him on is as we were heading towards going into the majority, House leadership began cultivating a conversation with people like him, and especially with him. And I think this was one of the mistakes that was made in, when Speaker Boehner was in, and Speaker Ryan, for that matter, too, wasn't able to bridge the relationships. Kevin McCarthy's a lot of things. I know him quite well. I've known him since 2006 when he was in the new member orientation. But he's a good communicator, and he understands, or at least implicitly understood when I served with him, the importance of building coalitions. Not a perfect person by any means, but, very clearly was, on this trajectory into leadership. And what he did is he worked with Thomas, the incoming rules chairman, Tom Cole, who's a wonderful person on top of being a brilliant legislator and a great student of history, helped to communicate and understand what the purpose of the Rules Committee is. And so, Norman can be an outlier. Chip Roy he's Chip Roy. He was Ted Cruz's chief of staff before running for Congress. So, he was one of the architects of the wonderful 2013 shutdown that got exactly nothing for the Republicans other than potentially putting them at political risk. And the bigger reality, though, and I really credit Thomas with this, is he understood the importance of moving bills through the Rules Committee that were leadership priorities, even if he was going to vote no on the floor, which he often did, but understood that the Rules Committee is an exclusive committee. It's the Speaker's committee, and the reason that it exists is to structure the rules for the majority to control legislation on the floor. Nancy Pelosi is a lot of things. I was her number 10 target in 2004 and her number 5 target in 2006. I know a lot about being on the receiving end of her vitriol, but she's a brilliant politician, and she understood that importance of one, maintaining cohesiveness around policy, but also in that control of the Rules Committee for what could come through and what could go to the floor for any number of reasons. And by weakening the Rules Committee, you essentially, and if I were Mike Johnson, candidly, I would start to make changes. At least one member to come off of it so that you have a working majority, so at least you can get legislation to the floor. And that's the purpose of that committee. It's a critical committee, and if a speaker cannot move and a majority leader can't get bills through that committee that do have consensus to pass with an overwhelming majority of our party, of the majority party, then those folks shouldn't be on that committee.
So I know we've kept you a really long time. I just wanted to do a quick rapid fire round and throw out a couple topics, and then you just give me your thoughts real quick. And I wanted to start with the border.
I'll keep it to short.
The border. Let's go. Rapid fire. Your Army. You can do this. Rapid fire on the border. Thoughts on that?
It's out of control completely, and the Democrats are in denial about it. I think one of the reasons that Tom Suozzi won the special election in Long Island last week was specifically because he was speaking to these issues, among others. You see other Democrats coming up, and I think the flashpoint to watch is the Texas Governor Abbott and what he does on the border. And I personally think he's taking the right steps to protect the sanctity of his border by using his National Guard and his state law enforcement to try to close it. I'm disappointed that we didn't move the border legislation that was brought out of the Senate. There was a great deal of misinformation about it, including from our erstwhile speaker, stuff that simply wasn't true. But hey, it's about emotion, not the facts, right?
Okay.
And so I wish we would have gotten that through, because there were significant improvements over the things in there that we tried to get done that we couldn't get through, sometimes because of Republicans way back in the day. But bottom line, as somebody who'd been involved in a lot of immigration legislation, it's out of control and needs to be fixed. And
okay.
It's very straightforward, but we're in a political place of extreme division between the left and right on what are acceptable compromises. And again, nobody wants to compromise, so the problem continues.
Okay. Israel.
The situation in Israel is very serious. I think one of the brilliant things that Yahya Sinwar, a truly evil person, did in that horrible attack filled with terrible atrocities, the worst day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, was the backlash of the Israeli response. And, as I told you yesterday on the phone, one friend of mine who's Israeli makes the comment that, you can't understand Israel unless you understand the Holocaust. And you have two traumatized people between the Palestinians, who are Israel people and who were living there before it became the Jewish state, and the Israelis who were there. And the pragmatists in the security apparatus have understood since 1967 the challenges of the occupied territories and what that means. You have desperate people who have very limited rights. Israel has a right to exist, a right to defend itself. I believe we should provide the additional assistance to them. But we're Sinwar and Hamas, who really don't care about their people. They see them as martyrs. I've been in Gaza many times before, it was shut down. But the one thing that I would tell you is that the strategic smart move, he knew the Israelis would overreact. And I think that I go back to this Holocaust analogy of my Israeli friend, political friend told me this, is that there was a cartoon that he had seen many years ago, but this really captures the sense of it. Was you have a picture of an armed to the teeth, very muscular Israeli soldier. Think they're Tier 1 special operations units like Shayatet 13 or Sayeret Maktal, staring into the mirror. And instead of seeing himself as he is this powerful warrior, what he sees is a skinny, starving waif with sunken eyes, with his striped pajamas and covered in dirt with his gold star on it. And that populates much of the Israeli mindset and the need to hit back so hard. Netanyahu needs to go. He's extremely unpopular in Israel. I think his most recent popularity is like 15%. And they need some adults in the room like former IDF chief Benny Gantz to lead the country. But ultimately, it's their decision what they're going to do. We need to move the legislation for Ukraine and for Israel and get it there. But at the same time, the most important thing is, what is the day after tomorrow going to be? Because you can't mow the lawn forever. And we could have a whole separate radio show about the Palestinian-Israel situation. I'm happy to do that if you want to.
Okay, and Taiwan. I got to ask you about Taiwan rapidly. Rapid fire here.
Significant Chinese provocation. We need to support Taiwan. I think that China would have a much harder time in a direct action conflict and slowly eroding over time. But, they view themselves internally, not in terms of actual physical boundaries. You think about they quote the 9-dash line for the South China Sea. That's why they have control over it. But there are many other sovereign nations that have rights too. But internally, Xi Jinping's vision of China is the empire of 1,000 years ago, and wanting, again, not unlike Putin, wanting to restore it's like make America great again. It's make Russia great again, make China great again. We need to do two things. One is provide an adequate level of support to Taiwan, because the amount of shipping that goes through the Bashi Channel on the north end of the South China Sea, or the Straits of Malacca in the southern end of it, is a real constraint for them. And China is on a clock demographically as well. I think if we can get through the next 10 years without a conflict, economics and demographics will take over. But it's going to be potentially pretty dicey in the near term.
Okay, and last one, America, because this is what we're fighting for.
I'll leave you with John 8:32 in the Greek. That says, Jesus said to his disciples in John 8, he said, if you know the truth, if you're really my disciples, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And the question is that we have in America right now is people are going to, whether you're on the far left, and I want to be my most authentic self and live my personal truth. Well, that's not what truth is. The truth that Jesus spoke to, and regardless of the faith walk or lack of faith of anybody who's listening, the lesson of that verse is universal, because the word in Greek, aletheia, that Jesus used for truth is the same word in Greek that was used to convey reality. And so what the Lord actually said was, if you know reality, then reality will set you free. And it didn't mean that there wouldn't be hardship, there wouldn't be challenges, the exigencies of life, but that we would make decisions where the majority of the information that we're using is objective fact. And we wouldn't be doing it on impulse. We wouldn't be doing it on innuendo. We wouldn't be doing it on emotion. And I think getting America back to truth in its communication with its people would be helpful, because both sides are, frankly, reprehensible in the stuff that's pushed out about, different sides. And getting back to that foundation of truth. I'm not going to get into a civility discussion with you, because politics is a brutal sport. But as my friend Mike Pence liked to say, I'm a conservative, but I'm not angry about it. And I think the reaction, and I'll leave you with this other thought, is I think the problem, the view of conservatives and Christians in particular by folks who don't share their views, is two things: fear, that they're scared and fearful, and that they're angry. And if one ascribes to the truths of the gospel, and they build their faith and their walk in life by that, that's you shouldn't be fearful and angry. You don't have a reason to be on the big pictures, because you know who holds the future for you, and you can make decisions, more objectively and calmly. And I think that getting back to let's say a spirit of more truth-based debate in this country on policy, and being able to share differences. I mean, look at the catastrophe in our college campuses. That's the one thing I think that was one of the great values of the horrible things that happened in Israel, is people got to see firsthand the garbage that's being taught in what used to be our major universities. And I wouldn't send one of my children to an Ivy League school if you paid me $1 million and gave them a full scholarship.
Very true.
I thought the poison ivy characterization was very apt.
Yeah.
Well, Congressman Geoff Davis, former Congressman of Kentucky, we've got to have you back. We kept you way over, but you are so incredible, and this conversation was just absolutely amazing. And I look forward to the world hearing it, because you've got a lot to say. So we will definitely have you back. You've got to be a regular.
Great. Hey, well, thank you. I enjoyed the time, and enjoy the rest of your day in the free state of Florida.
We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome to Veronica Live, and we are here with our next guest. He's one of my all-time favorite California guys, Drew Allen from the Drew Allen Podcast. And Drew has been out at CPAC. He's gotten to hang with all the conservatives. Drew, welcome back to Veronica Live.
Hey, it's good to be with you, live from CPAC, actually, which is kind of
fun. Okay. Well, when does it end?
Today. Today's the last day. So, no, we're waiting for Trump to show up and give a speech, so I'm going to stick around and hear that.
Okay.
I have not actually heard him speak in person before, so I'm looking forward to it.
Really? Oh my gosh, you are gonna love him in person.
That is going to be a treat, believe me. And he's funny as hell. You know, when I've been around and seen him speak, he is funny. He really is.
Well, and he's fighting the fight. So tell us about your experience, Drew, because you sent me a picture of Tulsi Gabbard. So I assume you heard her speak, and she's excellent as well. A former Democrat that she's, I guess, just declared. She says she's an independent now, but I think if you're showing up at CPAC and the event I met her at last September, it was a Republican event. We're close. We're close to the conversion, Drew.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I think that voices like Tulsi's who are coming out in support of President Trump, they certainly drown out some of those other voices that would, say otherwise. And, I actually had time, was able to spend some time with Tulsi, and I was around her. In fact, to be honest with you, she's a client right now. So anyway, I actually was escorting her from her speech over to Bannon's War Room, where she was on for a little bit, and so
I'll just
tell you some observations. I hadn't actually met her in person before, but she's got the it factor, if you will. She's just natural, so at ease. Maybe it's the Aloha Hawaii thing a little bit as well, but a super special woman. I got to be honest with you, and I think she terrifies the left because she's a strong woman. I mean, this is somebody who's still a lieutenant colonel in the reserves.
She is.
So anyway, I was able to watch her interact with people and speak, and I got to say, I'm very, very impressed with her. And she's, I forget that she's only 42, I think it is. So she's young.
Yeah, well, I wish she was like the Nikki Haley, because I could probably tolerate her. If you want to torture terrorists, tie them down and make them watch continued Nikki Haley speeches over and over and over again, Drew. Which I'll come back to CPAC, but today it's happening with Nikki Haley and Trump in her state, and she's going to be crushed. So I wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm so excited to watch Nikki Haley just get utterly humiliated like she deserves to be in her own home state of South Carolina. It's going to be delicious, I believe is the word. And I've never used that word before like that.
I like that.
Delicious. To watch. But I mean, I'm just so impressed. I was talking to somebody earlier about this with, there are many, many positive qualities to Trump. But one of those things is just his relentless work ethic. I mean, this is a guy who's coming out here. He's going to give a speech here. He's got to get back in South Carolina. This is a guy that never stops. And
no, he doesn't.
I wish some of the people that are quick to condemn him on every little news story that comes out attacking him would actually have some recognition for how special and unique he is. If any of us were facing one indictment, if any of us were facing one of these politically targeted and motivated prosecutions, we would freeze. We would be motionless. We would just stall out because of the pressure. And this guy has all of this going on, and yet he keeps moving. He keeps delivering speeches. He keeps going. He keeps going to rallies. He's going to South Carolina. He's still talking to the American people. And people should look at him as a human being. He's not a robot. Think about what he's able to do and what he is doing. It's a marvel to watch at this time in history. Somebody sustain it. It's worse than it was. As bad as 2016 was, and throughout his presidency with all the coups. I mean, they're still doing it, and he's still going forward. He hasn't given up. My goodness, the guy deserves some respect.
No, he's incredible, because I was our Trump chair in 2016, and he came, I got to see him 3 times at 3 rallies I worked, Drew, and it was more than an hour speech on fire. And then, towards the end, he did 5 rallies a day at the end of his campaign, the last leg. So he's just such a he fights so hard for America. So I guess what is your takeaways there at CPAC? Have you got to see some of the other speakers? I watched the Laura Trump speech this morning. I know that Elise, what's her last name? The one that's Stefanik is
Stefanik,
yeah.
Yeah.
So have you got to see some of these other amazing speakers?
I haven't heard anyone speak because I'm a publicist, so it's a little bit
even
different
busy.
here.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie. I've seen some of the speeches. I've watched some clips here and there.
Right.
But I was here to kind of look. To see these people also that I interact with all day, every day, and never meet. In the media world,
Fantastic.
Size people up kind of, and really, I wanted to interact with like some normal people who are here and get a feeling for where they are in terms of their alignment with 2024. Because one of my concerns was people are not understanding and accepting quickly enough the stakes of the 2024 election. They're not acknowledging the gravity of it because it's painful to do so. Do people get how serious this is for their own personal lives and families and also the country's future? And I think people are getting there, and that's encouraging. And this is definitely MAGA country. I'll tell you that too. So there's no division here at CPAC.
Well, it's always very electric when you get to be around, so many Republicans. When I went to the Trump inauguration, they were from everywhere. Even Canadians were there. So you're going to come back so fired up. But I know it's been crazy, and you've done your podcast and your Substack, and John and I were talking. The breaking news yesterday was darling Fani Willis with her 2,000 phone calls with her lover and 12,000 texts. Yet they're not together. And Belize she's like, what continent is Belize on? So that clip was played again yesterday, and I laughed a lot. So take it away with Fani.
Yeah. Well, look, she is, the tip of the iceberg in terms of just the utter corruption of this legal lawfare that's going on to go after Trump. I mean, look, think about it. I think I either wrote about this or talked about it. My main takeaway and point I've been driving about the Fani Willis crap is that she got her Tukis put in the hot seat, right? And she got actually questioned that day, and it showed how rotten she was. It showed how corrupt she was. And imagine if we could put Adam Schiff in a hot seat. Imagine if Nancy Pelosi could be in that situation. The accountability that we would actually get some satisfaction from experiencing, because that's what I saw with Fani Willis. We got a front row seat to just how bad and disgraceful these people are, and we caught her lying. And, it's just that's one person that at least because we got to see her sink, she couldn't stand up to the pressure. Like all these dominoes would fall as well. But, we don't ever get an opportunity to sit there and question Adam Schiff about his Trump-Russia collusion lies and everything else. But, man, how amazing would that be?
Go ahead, Jen.
We had our national committee man on Republican National Committee man, Peter Feynman, on last week, and Peter's a lawyer, and it was interesting talking to him because we're the Trump verdict up in New York, about his commercial businesses, where there's no victims yet he's being fined $355 million for no crime. And there was another story yesterday there that Letitia James scored another scalp, and that was the NRA's head, Wayne LaPierre, over fraud, because she did the same thing. She picked a target and then sicked the government on him to find a crime, and of course, the New York jury found him guilty, and it's horrifying to think that the justice in America now is based on the state in which you live or what your politics are, the flavor of your politics.
Well, exactly. And that's one of the biggest, most important reasons that we have to win 2024, to give them the middle finger and start pushing back against this, because, this is unprecedented. You pointed out other instances. So Trump we have to focus on. That's huge, going after the presidential candidate, but they're doing it to other people too. They have figured out a way to corrupt the justice system so that they can use that against the American people. And you don't have any rights under that. So it totally destroys our constitutional republic, the way they've managed to do this And it can't stand because you're right. I mean, no one's safe. These are show trials. The government can go after you and you'll have a trial, or you'll have, it looks real. It's in a courthouse, but everything else that follows is just an act, but unfortunately has dire consequences because you're going to find yourself in prison for a crime that you never committed.
Well, it's so embarrassing. So I wanted to know too, how's your book doing, America's Last Stand? Because you are a Trump fighter, and it's such an excellent book. So how's that going, Drew? Are you able to pitch that around when you're running around CPAC as well?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I got into some people's hands. It was fun to see some other clients. I spent some time with Chadwick Moore, who wrote the Tucker
I love
biography,
him.
which
Yes.
is tremendous. Dr. Naomi Wolf, I've spent a lot of time with her. She's a client. So it's been very fun, and that's been encouraging too, like talking to these really brilliant people that, I get to do PR for, but I haven't really spent time with personally. So that's been amazing. And I've given some of them the book to read. It's a weird space I live in because, it's like there's like two Drews, there's the publicist Drew that, that gets interviews and books interviews for all these, well-known people with books and so on and so forth. And then there's the other Drew that actually pre-existed this Drew, which is just the pundit, the author, and everything else. So it's kind of weird. I mean, I'm not really putting on both hats, I mean, occasionally, when it's appropriate, I'm giving the book because it's super important. I want people to read it. I think it will make a difference in the country. But there's some limitations in terms of just what I believe to be appropriateness, I guess, as the publicist here. That I hey, this is Naomi Wolf. Let's interview her, and then here's my book, by the way. So but no, it's going well.
Oh my goodness! Well, I know you talked about that leaked the discussion about the Russia space nuke, and it was such a big deal, and before we knew what they were talking about, John and I had chatted. I'm like, well, what could it be? And then why are they pushing this out? Are they trying to scare us again with another, fake narrative? So I wanted you to chat about your thoughts on that.
It was a distraction from other news items that were bad for Biden, for example. But the secondary thing is they're trying to force Americans to rally behind this corrupt war going on in Ukraine. And I cannot believe that they're actually going to go Trump-Russia collusion 2.0. I mean, this is actually what they've decided to do in 2024 now. And, I try to make an analogy to explain what's going on. I mean, it's revisionist history. It's not even true. But if you look at what the Democrat Party has done with their history with regards to racism in America, they created this artificial narrative. So they say, for example, that, in 1964, when LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act into law, that was the moment of the big switch. And I write about this in my book too, but it's the moment in which they claim Republicans, despite their entire history being devoted to righting these wrongs and giving blacks the rights that they were afforded under the same Constitution that we all live under, that, the Republicans magically became, racist and the Democrats became champions of blacks. But that's the story they pitched to people. And so with this Russia thing, I've tried to remind people that, they're trying to say that it's Trump, it's Republicans, it's MAGA who are pro-Putin. But if you go back to the Obama administration, remember, it was Hillary Clinton, Obama who sold them a fifth of our uranium stores. It was Bill Clinton who got paid $500,000 in Moscow to give a speech. And shortly after that, the deal went through to give Russia our uranium, which is used to make nuclear weapons. And so, and also, if you think about the Soviet Union, it's communism. Which party have the communists infiltrated since the 1920s? They went to Hollywood. They went to the left, to the Democrat Party. So now they're trying to tell us that, no, ignore all of this. It's the Republicans, and MAGA who are pro-Putin and love Russia. I mean, it's just nonsensical.
Very crazy. And we haven't chatted with, that border bill failure and what's been happening in Texas. So what's Drew thinking about all of this? We had that sadly, I think it was Thursday, a University of Georgia nursing student was killed now. It came out this morning that it was a Venezuelan. I mean, it had a Hispanic name, and I go, I bet he's an illegal. So, this is why I want our border closed, because now a family is suffering. They've lost their beautiful daughter, and this wouldn't have happened if our border was closed.
And apparently they've shifted from Texas, and I guess they're coming into California now by large numbers.
Yeah. Well, of course, Texas is putting up a fight and trying to prevent it or slow it down at least. So they just say, well, there's another border state, California. Gavin Newsom's there. He'll let us in. And that's what's happening. So now they're just going through a different pathway. I mean, this is treason what's happening. I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not trying to, instigate anything, but that's exactly what this is. And, if you use the Democrats' own logic, anytime there's a shooting, well, certain shootings, right, they say we have to, ban guns if it'll save one life. Well, if we ban the illegals and they weren't here, we would have saved these lives too. So by their own methodology, we should be closing the border. And I don't know if that would resonate with people or not, but I think it's a point worth trying to make is that, hey, you guys say if it'll save one life. Well, people are dying from fentanyl far more than from guns. And you've got illegals now that are also killing. So, we have to save these lives. And don't you guys want to do it? I mean, but, we don't really play offense, so I don't know what we're doing.
Well, and now a college girl's dead. And, I'm just so angry because I can't even imagine the hurt, and this girl had her entire future ahead of her, and it's gone because of this illegal. Gone.
And nobody cares. Think about this. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you follow that on. What do you think of this phenomena where in the big cities, and I saw this interview in Chicago a couple days ago, where the blacks and minorities are upset that this, I'll call it the spoils that they've, and the one lady said earned over time, that they're now all going to these illegals and they're taking away their stuff. It's like the race to the bottom on welfare or something. But they're going to actually vote. The lady said, I'm going to vote Republican for the first time in my life because I'm tired of them giving my stuff to the illegals. And she's talking about welfare benefits.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, I think that's a great development. And I think there are a lot of people out there that feel that way. I mean, this country's going to hell, really. And more and more people are seeing it. And it's becoming personal. People don't really change their opinions or become activists oftentimes until it affects them directly. And this is affecting these individuals directly. We're all being affected by inflation and everything else, too. But people tend to overlook that sometimes because the propaganda machine is good at distracting them. But when it comes to that, welfare, and you see this treatment around you directly, it has an impact. So I'm glad to see that. But, these are things that we should be caring about. This should drive people to the polls to support Trump, not this crap where they want to, get us upset about, Navalny, a Russian dissident,
right,
dying in a Russian prison. Meanwhile, Gonzalo Lira, of course, who was an American citizen, died in a Ukrainian jail for the exact same thing, being a dissident. And we don't care. Nobody talks about him. Nobody talks about this poor woman that was just killed by an illegal immigrant. I mean, that should drive people to anger, not somebody dying in Russia.
I mean, it could be your child, I'm just over it. My heart is broken for this family, and it's time to take control. I was just talking with you, because stupid Governor Newsom is like, come on over. Well, let's put up a border, except for where Drew lives, around California. And it's time to cut this off. It's out of control. And how many people have left California now because of what's been happening there? A ton.
Well, hey, I just recently it dawned on me, in addition to the many reasons that they want to bring in illegals to the country, one of the reasons they also want to do it is to protect their political power. And what I mean by that is not just them voting, but if you think about congressional power, right? How many House seats you're afforded? It has to do with the population of your state. And so when Americans are fleeing California, it reduces the influence of the Democrat Party. Since this comes around, they don't have as much power. So I'll remind you something. So the 3/5 compromise, right, that the left has totally lied about what it meant. The Republicans negotiated with the Democrats, right, that black slaves were going to be counted as 3/5 of a person towards the census. And that was to reduce the power and influence of the southern slave states. It wasn't an attack against black people. It was Republicans trying to reduce and diminish the power of the slave states. And so that's what's at play here. They're losing population, but they're going to reinforce it with illegals. And they're allowing these illegals to be counted in the census, which is so crazy to me. And that's something that Joe Biden made happen right when he came into office. So they're using these people to basically, naturally, we should get more power and they should get less because of what they're doing to the country. But they're bringing illegals in to maintain that power. It's crazy.
It's out of control. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was saying that, they criticized the Trump people because they wanted to make it to be a requirement to be a U.S. citizen to get counted. And, Florida gained 2 congressional seats in the last census, and those came from somewhere else, like New York, losing one. And I think you're absolutely right. This is a bid to, and you notice they're not just putting it in one state; they're spreading them all over the place. So it's not just, they're not sending them to Florida; they're sending them to New York and Illinois, Chicago and Colorado and all these places where they are trying to increase their population.
Yeah, they're reinforcing their numbers artificially by breaking the law, bringing in these illegals. And no doubt about it, they're going to use them to vote in the 2024 election. How are you going to prevent it? If you do mail-in ballots in a Democrat-controlled state, like in Philadelphia, let's look at Pennsylvania. This is my main concern, and I'm 100% confident that they're going to do this because if you motor voter, if you just get a driver's license, which you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to get a driver's license, automatically registered to vote. And if you're in the system, you're going to get a ballot. And so,
it's disgusting. Let's say you got, it's disgusting.
Yeah, that's what it is. What they're doing now, and it's in front of our face.
Right. Well, the interesting part I heard was we're going to have to win. That in terms of honest numbers, we need to bring 5% more, win by 5 percentage points more to make up for the Democrat cheating in ballot harvesting and flat out ballot fraud that they're planning. Well,
and I was watching Laura Trump's CPAC speech this morning, Drew, and she's like, we've got to play like they play with mail in and right. Getting people to the polls and not just voting on election day.
Yes, we do.
So she said it in her speech, and so hopefully we can make the change on that for sure.
If we don't play by the same rules, we're going to lose. That's the problem.
And I don't mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Drew.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I don't mean to bring any pessimism. I have confidence in 2024, but, I do think that we're still behind on the learning curve about, how we're going to have the infrastructure in place to actually utilize mail-in ballots like they do, because they built that system to help themselves. And so we're being asked to adopt that system that they created and use it against them to our advantage too. And I do not think that people mentally or even strategically are ready to do that for 2024.
Well, just in breaking news, the brother of the guy that's charged now with killing the UGA student, guess what? He's been arrested for having a fake green card, Drew, just in. So I'm like, we can't even make this up. I mean, these people are illegals.
Who pays the price for this? Who pays the price
family.
For this?
The family.
Well, they pay the price, but I'm saying there's no price paid for the people that are responsible for allowing that person to stay here, that didn't do their job, that violated the law, that put that person back on the streets. There's no accountability for it. And until there's accountability for that too, it's also going to keep happening. These people are responsible. They have blood on their hands, as they like to say, which is true. And they just walk around like free people. Nothing happens to them. I mean, this is the outrageous thing. There's zero accountability for any of these people in government that are actually getting people killed. But if you get a jaywalking ticket, or if you took a selfie in the on J6, you're going to spend 16 years in prison. It's outrageous.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite little posts on this Instagram this morning regarding the story, someone wrote, "This is blood on Biden, Harris, and Mayorkas' hands, and then these parents need to sue the Biden administration." And I'm all in. I'm all in because now they've lost their child that had a brilliant future ahead of her. I'm just disgusted by this.
Well, some of this goes to to Arizona, where this one of the stories this past week in Arizona, refusing to extradite an illegal immigrant back to New York because they said, why? Alvin Bragg's not going to charge him. He's just going to let him go. So
yeah, I saw that state attorney. Yeah, she's like, we have plenty to keep this guy in prison for years and years. Yeah, he'd probably be out, and he killed a woman there in Soho. So ridiculous. So I know, Drew, I think I don't know if it was on your Substack. I saw it. You commented on the prostitutes that are exposing people to HIV and how the DOJ is rolled in, to I guess they're considered handicapped, because John and I talked about this last
Americans
week.
With Disabilities Act.
It's okay for prostitutes to spread their HIV to you and me. I mean, well, who's going to a prostitute? But the bottom line is our government is just absolutely ludicrous. They've lost their marbles. It's complete insanity. It's okay. You're disabled if you have HIV and you're spreading it to everybody. It's okay. Drew?
Yeah, well, there's only one word to describe it, and it's a 4-letter word, and it's called evil.
Oh, okay.
This is evil. Yeah. No,
okay, I thought it was the F word. I've tried to give that word up for Lent, and I've tried to give up stupid people for Lent, and it is not happening, Drew. It is not happening for me.
Well, look, I've really challenged myself today. I said I've been don't tell anyone. Hopefully, my family's not. I've been cursing like a sailor lately, and it's the PR world or politics or something like that. And I can't say I've probably had the most articulate expressions of my thoughts over the past few days necessarily. And so I'm really bringing out the greatest effort I can to be articulate, choose my words selectively. I'm even speaking a little bit slower than usual, if you haven't noticed. I really took the challenge today. So I'm going to go on this show. I'm going to be the best Drew that I can be.
You're so good. And then I wanted to, are you not disgusted? Back to the Trump and the 55 million, and then the darling Letitia, who wants to be governor of New York, is like, she's got her sights set on his Trump building on Wall Street, because she wants that trophy. It is just... Yeah. I cannot believe we live in America. I lived in a third world country. It was not fun. There was corruption on everything from getting your car registered, to you have a car accident not caused by you. They say it was caused by you. There was nothing you could do. It is horrific. We are so heading that way. And people haven't stood up. I just kind of wish that all Americans would donate $10 and then it would be, we'd pay off this fine for him. But I'm sick. I can't believe I live in America.
Well, yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's just like the mental gymnastics too. There's no basis in law actually for this. That's what's the challenge about explaining this to people is, it's very superficial. So, there's this law in the books and that law. They're just they're creating this situation. It's so outrageous, and they're forcing him to put that money up front for bail, basically. Before he can appeal it. It's just they are doing anything and everything they can to destroy this man. And there's just doesn't seem to be any limit to what they're willing to do to destroy him and his family. And, if he does not win, think about what might happen to him.
I don't know what's going to happen to our country,
Well, they're perverting the law, and everything just in order to get Trump. It just and anything seems to be fair game to these people, no matter what. I heard some stories on the impeachment stuff and the history of high crimes and misdemeanors, and it has absolutely nothing to do with criminal activities, And you're like, how did they pervert a phone call into a high crime and misdemeanor, and it's like, it's a political act, and they have no shame about perverting our laws in our country.
Well, and that's why it's so imperative that he wins, because look, if he loses, they stick him in prison, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, the country is most important, but part of that is the signal it sends. This is the victory of all victories. This is, Gettysburg, if you will, or something like that in terms of great battles, because if they prevail, what's it going to do? It's going to break this country. It's going to break us mentally. I don't know what will happen after that, but if they can stick the most powerful man arguably in the world in prison over stuff he didn't do, there's nothing that can protect you.
So, Go ahead, John.
Joe Biden walks on classified documents that he willfully stole, and here Trump, who has every legal authority to have classified information, he's the one that's being prosecuted, and Joe's too old and stupid, to be prosecuted. I mean, and he's the president.
Did you see? You probably were too busy yesterday, but it was all over X. And what is I don't even know what a tweet's called these days, but the tweet had Biden and Pelosi on a tarmac.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Shuffling. Like she's in her high heels, she's pretty spry for 81.
Holding hands.
She's trying to get him to the airplane, and it was literally frightening, Drew. Literally, this man needs to go, and the Dems are embarrassing. To even put this guy forward is just disgusting too.
Well, yes. I mean, the sickest, the frailest, the dumbest, the most evil. These are the people that are walking around, and they're the leaders of our country. It's honestly, it's a humiliating thing to watch. Anytime you turn on a TV or watch Biden, the fake president, do anything. It's just because look, when you're elected to office, you do represent something else. So the president is a reflection of the country, and it has a great impact, whether you want it to or not, on the psyche of a country. And so he does transmit nothing but weakness. And that's our enemies see it, the American people see it, and it affects our own way we feel about ourselves. I mean, that's why it's so important that we as people continue to lift America up and talk favorably, talk positively about Trump and what he can do and why we must elect him, because all this pessimism and negativity, it's contagious, but so is optimism. And so we have to be careful. I mean, I had somebody the other day, complain to me, well, if you see Trump, somebody I know, right, that's a Republican, if you see Trump, you tell him to stop, bashing the military. I guess he said something about Nikki Haley's husband, which I could care less about. But this is what our side sits here and does. We take these CNN stories and Trump's at it again. If he would just shut his mouth. No. I'm not playing that game anymore. I don't care. I'm going to defend Trump at this time, and I'm not going to get bogged down in the minutia of what the media feeds me and wants me to be upset about. It's not happening anymore. So I'm not messing with that.
All right. Well, I'm going to follow suit. What are we missing, Drew? Because I know you're busy at CPAC. What have we missed that you wanted to share with us today? Because I'm always dying to talk politics and the world issues with you.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the most interesting thing I can tell the audience, today is stuff just, that they're not here for. That's real experiences. I mean, it's been so interesting to me. So if you think about a lot of these kind of celebrities, if you will, in this world, like Dr. Wolf, for example, very well known, but you don't really know. Like, you can go on TV, you don't know how many people you're impacting because you're doing it from your house. To walk around with Naomi, for example, yesterday and spend time with her, so many people came up to her and are so appreciative of what she's done for them personally. I mean, it's just like, it's so cool to see that people are having impact. So you doing your show, getting this information out there, it is having an impact. It is important, and it's imperative that you keep doing it and we keep doing it, because people are affected. Chadwick Moore, walking around with him, people coming up to him saying, hi, I read that book on Tucker. Thank you.
Yeah, I loved when he came on.
Resonates,
yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, anyways,
it makes a difference.
I'm excited to hear what you think of a Trump speech, because it's electric. I mean, I remember going to working the rallies for him, and I was like, what politician can pack an entire arena like a Rolling Stones concert and deliver? And he doesn't even have an instrument that he's playing. So you're in for it today, Drew. I'm so excited for you.
Carrie Lake's speaking right now, actually. I'm looking through the door. And,
oh my gosh! Wow. Well, we'll let you go.
All the Dane Graham people there.
And we'll have you back.
She's a client too, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we've got to hear. All right. Well, God bless you, and Trump 2024. We've got to take America back.
That's right. Thanks. It's great being with you. We'll
be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live. And oh my goodness, John, sometimes we have guests that we just had Drew Allen, who's at CPAC, and he's going to see Trump for the first time today. So I can't wait to have him back because that blows your socks off. And then, yep. I had former Congressman Geoff Davis on. He was only supposed to be on for 30 minutes. Oh my goodness. We talked to him for more than an hour. Yes. And so I was texting him now, and I said, I'll be sending the book chapter names for your book that you'll be writing for me later when I catch my breath, because how he ties the history, and I'm trying to become more historical myself. So we had that author on recently, wrote that political book, and so I ordered his history book that's probably 1,000 pages that's arrived. And, because I just feel like we forget history and we don't want to repeat history, and we need to know some of it, right, John, to tie it into today.
I'm trying to remember. There's some quote or something that those that don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. Something like that.
Was that I think it was a President Kennedy quote.
Yeah.
But no, and today, I mean, Congressman Davis was just incredible. And I said it last time. He's definitely going to be a regular because he's got the radio voice, and what he shares with us is amazing.
His inside knowledge is astonishing.
Oh my gosh. And, he's friends, went to West Point, was a congressman. And then, of course, he's friends with General Petraeus and everybody else, that he knows. And so we'll have him back. But I did want to talk about the Warrior Beach retreat. Was Thursday night, the dinner and the ceremony. And I was so blessed to recruit Colonel Alan West, former Florida congressman, to come. And I escorted him. He landed Wednesday. The Warrior Beach retreat, there was all these veterans with their Harleys, and they had a red carpet in the airport, and they were all holding flags. And Parker McClellan, the CEO of the airport, announced, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, U.S. Army, and everybody was clapping. They announced him on the plane, and Colonel West was like, what? And then, of course, I got to drive him to the hotel, and we had a police escort. So that was my first police escort of many. And shout out to the Bay County Sheriff's Office. They were literally incredible. And so we went to the hotel, and then later that night we had a police escort to the Saltwater Grill, and he had an intimate dinner with he sat with all the combat wounded veterans. So we had 8 combat wounded veterans and their spouses, and 4 Vietnam vets that never got recognized with their spouses as well. And at one point, one of the combat wounded veterans challenged, actually it was Colonel West was singing the Army song and tried to make us all sing our songs, but the Air Force song has gone gender neutral, and I don't know the new words because it's not it's not him anymore. Off we go. I'm like, I don't know the words, and then I was trying to Google it, and that let me down. So anyways, he knew his song, and so he challenged, if anybody wanted to do push-ups. So next thing you know, 63-year-old Colonel Alan West, who's extremely fit and did like a 5-mile run the next day, was on the floor doing push-ups with one of the combat wounded veterans. So that was adorable, just the camaraderie. And then the next day, Colonel West and I did a hit on WJHG to talk about the parade that happened at 4 p.m. that day with two F-35s flying over the Hathaway Bridge. And so we did the hit. Then I went to lunch with him and the veterans again. And the veterans got to go deep sea fishing. The wives went to the spa. They got makeup and their hair done for that evening. But the parade was so moving, John. It was so moving. There was people lined up. Like, I think it was a 25-mile parade. They were lined up. One woman was holding a huge poster of her son who was killed. I was told in Iraq. So I had tears in my eyes. I was trying not to crash the car, because it was so moving. Little children at the elementary school that we passed, there was one little boy that was scrumptious with his homemade flag sign. And then we passed the Navy base, and all of the Navy sailors, and I don't know if there was multiple services there from the dive school. They were all lined up against the fence, saluting. Absolutely incredible. And the Bay County Sheriff's Office was there. Oh my goodness. They have these ninja bikes that are electric that you can't hear but look mega cool. So they're speeding off and trying to block the traffic, and the Challenger that's like zoom, zoom. And then they have, their big biker guys from the sheriff's office, and literally the dedication that Sheriff Tommy's Ford people did to this event was incredible too. So Alan West and I were just blown away. I'm crying in the car. I was like, do I have my waterproof mascara on? Because we were at that point headed to the dinner. We stopped on the bridge for the two F-35s to fly over. And so that was incredible. Just the sound of freedom. And oh my gosh, F-35s are loud. They're so loud. And then we went to the dinner. And it was great because Colonel Watkins, Bonsai Watkins, the wing commander from Tyndall came. Chief Sharp, his command chief, was there. Sheriff Ford was there. Just all these VIPs that really showed up. And, I helped with I did all the VIP seating for everybody. So that was fun. And then beautiful dinner. Fast forward to the ceremony. So Don Arias, who used to be my co-host, I recruited him to be the MC. My friend Renee Bird, whose husband's also a lieutenant, she sang the national anthem, and she blew it out of the house. And I was so honored because I got to introduce Colonel West, and I'd been so busy helping with the ceremony and escorting him and picking him up and driving him around and doing the TV. So I wrote my speech that morning at 5 a.m., but it was really good. so I did okay. And then, of course, what was so moving is they invited two of the couples up to talk about what the retreat had meant to them. And one of the former Army enlisted guys I sat next to at lunch, and he talked about he was a canine handler and how, he just can never sleep anymore. He just can't turn it off, kind of a PTSD thing. And so he got up on stage. His wife delivered this incredible speech about being a caregiver, because sometimes wounds are not physical, they're mental. And you think this person's okay. And a lot of times when these things happen, be it a physical or mental wound, marriages break up. So here's this couple that's been trying to keep it together. And he talked about how this was the first time when he came back from, because the Army used to deploy people to Afghanistan and Iraq like every other minute. You'd be home for 5 minutes, gone the next day to another, back in the war zone. And he said this was the first time anybody had ever thanked him, and how moved he was by the parade and everything. So people were like crying in the audience from these testimonials. They were so moving. And Linda and Philip and Jonathan Cope have been doing this for 15 years, and I had no idea the give back, because it was so fun. The ladies had been to the spa. They rented a huge limo. And so they came to the airport. So they were a few minutes late, and Alan West was so funny. He's like, of course, the women are always late, but this beautiful limo with flags on it pulled up, and all these women popped out, and they were all so happy because they'd had a spa day. And then they all hugged Colonel West. So that was beautiful. And then he got up and spoke at the ceremony, and oh my gosh, he's just a powerhouse speaker. He talked about how we take an oath and we have to serve our nation. And it never goes away. Even when you leave the military, you retire, that oath needs to be part of you. And so there was hundreds of people there. The state attorney was sitting next to me. Mayor Rowan came. There's just all kinds of people, full house. And he's like, I challenge you. He goes, I'll come back next year because we've got to continue this fight. Because he saw how moving it was with the veterans, and their spouses. And so, he's like, I'll be back next year because I want to make sure every seat in here is full. And I'm challenging all of you. So incredible evening.
I was glad to see that Linda Cope invited the Vietnam veterans also.
Yes, and they were so moved too, because Vietnam vets were fully punched in the gut, during their time, and all of them were everybody was just so lovely. I was so moved, John. I mean, I haven't recovered because I was on the go for, Thursday was like an 18-hour day for me. And then, plus I'm recovering from COVID. So I'm not my type A, I'm normally mock at every moment. So I'm not quite mock yet. And I had to push and dig deep because this was just too important. It was, more than a Veronica. This was a give back. And when you see and hear what these people had to say, it was incredible. And then being with Colonel West picked him up Wednesday. I delivered him Friday morning to the airport. And it was so funny. When we came to the airport or to the hotel Wednesday night before the dinner, the sun was setting. And I was like, Colonel West, let's go. We got to get out there to the balcony. I've got to get your picture with the sun setting. Well, then he got mobbed by a bunch of people from Wisconsin. They're like, Colonel West, oh my gosh, we see you on Fox News. And, and so that everywhere. And like the parade, I had the top down in my car, everybody screaming, thank you, Colonel West. And there's firemen out, just, oh my gosh, John, so moving.
The
patriotism.
Is, Veronica.
I know it. I was crying. I was
really
literally crying because you forget this. And this county, Bay County.
This is the good side. We sit here and we talk about, New York and Letitia James and Fani Willis and Gavin Newsom and all the illegals and the Ukraine and Sleepy Joe. That's all bad stuff. There's still a lot of good in this country.
Well, Lieutenant Larry Granger, one of the Bay County Sheriff Office lieutenants, I got to sit next to his wife and him at the first dinner, and he was on at the ceremony. He wrote a song. I can't remember the name right now, but because he'd been volunteering with these retreats, I guess, for several years, and he is a gifted country singer. So he had this song, and he told me at the dinner that he'd been practicing it because it has a slideshow that's timed perfectly to the words. And so he was performing the song before I had to go intro Colonel West. So I did not look at the slides because I was like, I can't be a basket case before I have to introduce the keynote. But the song was incredible. It was so beautiful. His voice, I mean, he needs to be in Nashville. He needs to retire. I'll be his agent. Literally a breathtaking song. So I'm just floored. I had no idea the level of this, Warrior Beach retreat, what the Copes have done. I didn't know. I mean, I've had her on my show, several times, and I'm literally blown away and just what it gives back. Because when I had lunch with her husband, I'll have to have him on. He talked about how they'd had a vet had come a few years back and contemplated killing himself that night because they were staying in a high-rise hotel. But the camaraderie, and that was the other thing, that everybody, when you hang out with people that have been through what you've been through, you bond, and in the military we're tight anyways, but sometimes you leave and step away, and the civilian world doesn't have the camaraderie as the military does, with our brothers and sisters. So, anyways, I just had to talk about that because I'm just still so moved by it. It was just absolutely beautiful, and so many people stepped up, and and I'm always recruiting people. So it was, I thank all the people I recruited, and even this one lady, Belinda, that I know, she came and helped me run the VIP seating. So that was so sweet. So anyways, yes, we do live in a wonderful county.
What excelled as far as its execution went.
Yeah. So anyways, great event. But We have to talk about New York City every week, John, or we're just not.
Yeah. Well, you got family in New York City.
I know.
So,
I
got
know.
an interest in there.
I know. And I'm always like, the military woman in me, I've got to have a plan, just like you got to have your, go bag, in case there's a hurricane or whatever.
Well, I was just thinking, do your kids have a go bag together?
Well, I've been, they come from military stock, and I've tried to broach the subject several times because I've talked to people that were there, when 9/11 happened. And so I have said, what if something happened? What if all your, and what happened this week, John? Thousands of people did not have cell phones, and we don't have landlines in our house. I'm sure you saw that story. And it was, I guess, an AT&T outage that caused Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T cell phones not to work. And what do you do? Because you and I lived through the hurricane and here, several years ago.
10 days with no cell phone service.
It was hell. Yeah. And it's not because I needed to tweet, and because yesterday I was meeting somebody for lunch after I dropped off Alan West. I came home and I went to leave and I forgot my cell phone. And so I didn't have it for 2 hours. So I was texting in the air, John. but I'm like I'm never off the grid except for during Hurricane Michael, and I didn't enjoy not having my cell phone again.
Well, people don't understand. One of the things that the hurricane brought home was, like I said, no cell phone service for 10 days, no electricity for almost 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I need to call the police or I need to call the fire department.
And you can't.
You can't.
It's the worst feeling ever. And we know there was grifters running around, because now, I never needed a full-on armory. I have my own armory. And, it was so scary.
On your own, it's dark outside when there's no lights on, and I'm no lights on anywhere.
But I do feel that now I know all of so many wonderful members that work for Sheriff Ford that I hope not to get a ticket. I mean, I don't speed, but if I ever were, I might be okay.
Well, do you think Sheriff Ford has a dance team?
That's right.
Like New York City does, like the New York City Police Department does?
Well, you sent me this story, and I'd already, because now that I'm, Twitter premium and have my blue check mark, somebody actually posted the video, and the story is the dance team for the budget-strapped NYPD goes viral after a I'm going to say cringe-worthy, because it was cringe-worthy. They need worthy in the... cringe performance on local TV. And so it's the members of the dance team of the NYPD received national attention this week when their little video of them dancing around went viral, and it literally was horrific. I mean, it was so bad. And it was so funny because, my dad was a black belt in judo and made like the Olympic team. And so I grew up having to do judo, not dance. But then I saw the women dancing on this NYPD team, and they were the ones like me that never got to go to dance class, John.
Well, I thought the comment there that it looked like the opening for a Weight Watchers commercial was really appropriate.
So, I mean, honestly, it's probably not that bad because every organization has things you can join. And the lady said it's because they decompress, but it was awful. It was awful because, if there's any money going behind this, we need to put that money into fighting crime.
They've got money for this, but they don't have money for that, for stuff that really makes a difference.
And the story says that the NYPD is in a hiring freeze, and they've had to cut 10% of their 33,000 officers. And when I was there at Thanksgiving, and I bumped into all these Hamas, pro-Hamas, protests,
idiots.
Like the first one was at the Macy's Day Parade, and all of a sudden there's 20 cops running because these losers glued themselves in the middle of the Macy's Day Parade. So you have to have a strong, force in New York, and there's all those, iconic buildings, and not just the Trump building that Letitia has her eye on, and Wall Street.
Well, when Adams just made I think a week ago, pronouncement that every department in New York City's government has to take a 5% budget cut because of the illegal alien situation, and all the money they're spending on that. And it just shows you where the priorities are at these days.
Well, and their budget, they have, I think, 9 million people that live in New York. Their budget's $10.8 billion. And, but the funniest line in the story was, popular meme sharing X account Planet of Memes, which I need to go follow on X, called the performance the next level cringe. And like an opening, yeah, you said it, for Weight Watchers infomercial. Oh my gosh. It just was bad. I'm sorry. Which, it's probably an innocent gathering of people, but, when you're thinking of the NYPD, I want to think of them as, several years ago, I was in New York and we were in Times Square, which always avoid Times Square. That's a warning. Avoid Times Square.
Veronica, I'm kind of of the opinion, if these people want to go to a dance class, let them pay to go to a dance class. If
I agree.
Baseball, let them go play baseball.
But
they don't need taxpayer money to pay for this stuff.
Well, there's too much going on in New York already. And so I was near we were walking through Times Square, which it's a nightmare because there's all these people that attack you and they want you to have pictures with their Elmo dolls, and it's horrific. And a bread van was there, and the bread van back doors popped open, and next thing you know, there's all these cops with, AKs jumped out of this vehicle right next to where we're walking. And we quickly ran the other direction. But, there's crime in New York, and that's where the money has to be.
A lot of it's tourists. They make a lot of money from tourists. I know we went and spent a week at the Marriott in Times Square. And this was before, Adams and Bill de Blasio got hold of the place, where you could actually go out and walk around in Times Square at night and feel safe. Okay.
Right.
And what you would see is a lot of these, I'm presuming they're from Africa. They're illegal immigrants from Africa. And they come in and they set up these little stands, and they're trying to sell art or something,
Right.
It's just flat illegal. Right. And they would they wouldn't be there for 5 minutes before the police would be on them. Not anymore, Now it's just whatever goes there, And why anybody would want to go in there and be exposed to that filth, or we took our granddaughter up there, okay? To go down to went down to the World Trade Center there, to the memorial and stuff, and did all,
which is breathtaking.
And we actually rode the subway, and again, we weren't fearful of our lives. I wouldn't take the subway today.
Well, you can only take the subway, as my children tell me, when the whole world's taking the subway.
Yeah,
exactly. But they just had, I think it was at Brooklyn, or I don't know, a bunch of people that were shot on the subway because people get in fights and they start shooting everybody, and a bystander died. So
I would not be a tourist and go to New York today. I just would leave the place to the criminals and the illegals and whatever's going on up there. I have no desire to go up there.
Well, I have to go up there because my people, but and I, certain neighborhoods you feel safe, but you just always have to know your surroundings, and just like this, I'm just heartbroken for the University of Georgia, the family of this girl that was killed by an illegal, because if we had a closed border, she was living her best life to be a nurse. They showed a picture of her, in her scrubs with the white jacket, and now her life's snuffed out. I have a problem with this. This is disgusting. I keep saying the word disgusting because I'm stuck on that word. It's out of control. Somebody's life is gone now. She's not going to get married, have children. The parents aren't going to have grandbabies. This ruins everything for that family, what has gone down.
That's the cost that we don't see. And of course, District Attorney Fani Willis, this is in Atlanta, okay? So she's more concerned about going after Trump and protecting her booty calls than she is about prosecuting the incredible amount of crime in Atlanta.
It's disgusting. She paid that guy. I saw $650,000. You told me last week it was $1 million. I need to go look up that number. This loser that was sweating bullets, they're flying around to Belize, and I don't know, they went to all these fancy places. if you're really prosecuting Trump, how do you have time? Every lawyer I know, I'm friends with several lawyers. They barely ever take vacation. So that's why, don't choose law, be a lawyer because you work.
I'm trying to figure out, how do you do 12,000 tweets?
I don't know,
because
how do
you send 12,000 text messages?
I'm a busy person, and that was the thing. A lot of people were texting me the last couple days, but I was actively engaged with a VIP, taking his handling, and then of course in setting up all of this VIP stuff for the dinner and then for the venue and making sure the flowers and the tablecloths. And I have, I've done events for years, but it was a lot of work and I didn't have time to sit and email or text anybody. You know what I'm saying? I was too busy. So
what's going to be interesting, Veronica, is to see what happens now, because he got on the stand and was directly asked if there were phone records that would show messages, and visits to the condo, before this date, whatever the date was. It turned out it was before something 2022. And the guy actually said those records would be wrong. And I'm like, holy crap. First off, this guy's supposed to be a lawyer, okay? He's supposed to be so smart that Fani had to hire
They're
him.
so dumb, and that's the thing, is that their heads have exploded with the fame, and they're stupid people.
What's the first thing that you see about asking questions on the stand? If you're a lawyer, don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to, right? I've heard that hundreds of times. Don't ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. And this guy's a lawyer, and he's asked a question about phone records. Now, you think he would be smart enough to know, if they're asking me a question about phone records, maybe they have some phone records, and maybe I should be saying I don't remember.
I'm taking the fifth.
No, those are all wrong, That never happened. So now they've got him on perjury, and they've got her on perjury.
Well, they need to go.
If anything happens,
they need to go. And last show we talked, because now they're bringing out the race issue, and when are we going to change race? It's not race. It's the stupid people issue that I've tried to give up for Lent.
These are corrupt. These are corrupt people that are evil.
That have taken taxpayer money to go run around on their vacation. So. Anyways, but we have a lot in the after. Go ahead, John, and then we'll turn to the afterburner.
Like what we have in the afterburner there. We have the story of this mayor, the supposed mayor. Well, she is the mayor of this little city outside of Chicago. She makes over $300,000 a year, and she sits there and she's berating people on. I don't know if you watched the video clip of her, but she's talking to telling everybody, well, you're just after me because I'm black and I'm a woman in power. It's like, no, and
this is when Obama won the presidency. I was so excited because I was like, wow, we have our first black president. We are done with race. Because in the military, you don't feel this like in the civilian world. And it's only gotten worse every year. All these people in positions of power, and if something, when they're corrupt, we're racist. So we had Drew on earlier, and he's like, he's not going to take it anymore when people say dumb things, and I'm over it. So take your race and go jump in a lake, because I'm not a racist. I'm sick of dumb people, and we're not taking it anymore. So, and it starts here. We're over it.
I know, but everything is DEI these days, and there's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really die.
Well,
your business is going to die. But
I mean, somebody sent me a DEI story today. A big company brags that it pays white employees less than non-white employees despite the same job title. How is that okay? How is that okay?
It's illegal. It's illegal. But you're not going to find the Federal Trade Commission or Department of Labor going after them, are you?
Well, and then we had the congressman on that said that when they met with Austin on his priorities, it was climate change and that there was a white supremacy issue. And we heard that damn line from General Milley. There's no white supremacy. I'd say there's 1 out of a million. Give me a freaking break. Because you work on these people, especially like boot camp, they're trying to make a cohesive team if you're going enlisted. Know, and a white supremacist is not going to have time in a 5-mile run to be a racist, Yep. So don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're here and there. There's always a pocket of bad people everywhere, but it's not what they were pushing.
You're dealing with people, and you're always going to have a bad apple or two, and it doesn't matter what you do or how much screening you do. It's life. It's called life, okay? But the problem is we've got the tech companies, and one of the most egregious stories I saw and this weekend was about Google and this Google Gemini program. So Gemini is sort of like Dolly, that's as in DALL-E, and I think that's the Microsoft version of it. But it's a program that you put some information into it. You type in some words, and it creates artwork for you. And they found out that the white guy that's in charge of this Google Gemini program thinks white people are racist. So he's been implementing his white people are racist policy on this Gemini program. So you type in some words like, show me a picture of a German World War II soldier, and what you get back is a guy in a German Nazi uniform that's black. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
And then they have some other variants, and one of them was an Asian woman in a German Nazi uniform, but there are no white people. None of the responses will return an image with a white person in it. They asked her a picture of the Pope, right? And it come back with this black guy as Pope. It came back with a woman as Pope. And it's like, this is really stupid. And then so one of the tests was a guy put, show me a picture of a white person. And the Google thing came back and said, we can't do that. If you want some other race, ethnicity, we can do that, but we can't do white people. I mean, that's how insane this tech crap is.
Well, I have to say, because I was, since I was so busy this week, I didn't watch the CPAC stuff. And so I was trying to Google CPAC stories, and there weren't that many on Google, on Chrome. There were not that many that were popping up. I had to work for it. So
because it's conservative news is what it is,
Yeah.
And it's sad that you have to have this parallel economy. And literally, that to go find the truth of anything. Well, and you're not going to find it on Google. You're not going to find it on Facebook. You're not going to find it on Instagram. I mean, you're not going to find it on TikTok.
That's why I like Twitter or X now, because it's there. It truly is there.
Right, and it is. They're removing the censorship, and now the government is going after them because the government, they won't follow the government.
Well, and people actually cuss on X. They write, that F word and stuff, and they seem to be okay. Like if you did that on calling things out, it would be a problem.
It's who? Oh, it's Drew we were talking to was talking about how coarse language has become these days, and you see it on TV all the time nowadays because they don't even bother. They let the censors bleep the stuff now. They just go ahead and say the words, and anyways, and then rely on the bleepers to fix it.
Well, back to our afterburner. One of the stories, and I had heard this too, that Gates, he's not running for governor. He posted an announcement on social media. The day Florida lawmakers unrolled a runoff proposal seen by some as a move to hurt his chances to win the GOP nomination should he run in 2026. So the Fort Walton Beach Republican calls runoffs an unnecessary expense, but he also said his aspirations motivated a change in state law that wasn't necessary. And his quote is, runoff elections cost taxpayers millions. They increase targets for fraudsters and empower establishment candidates over firebrands. They are a bad idea. So you guys in Tally didn't have to do this. I have no plans to run for governor, which I'm shocked because he was there when I was in Tallahassee trying to help Peter win the chairmanship. And, I saw him the night before when I was at dinner, and, he hugged me that day of the event. And he was there. Byron Donalds was there. I don't know why Congressman Dunn was there because he had no reason to be there. And I thought they were there because they were, all of the national press was there and they were putting their big toe in front of them as, contenders.
Yeah, I was, I haven't figured out why that piece of legislation came up, or maybe I'm thinking it was a poison pill maybe, because there was another part of that legislation that would have eliminated drop-off ballot boxes, which I'm against. I don't think we need. I don't think we need drop-off ballot boxes in the state of Florida. But apparently, yesterday the committee pulled that bill, so it's dead for the year. So this not only does the change not happen, but also the no ballot drop-off for the ballot boxes. That's also gone and died for the year.
Okay. Well, it said for Florida politics, it named Gates Politician of the Year for 2023. And then his last quote was, I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So, I don't know. Not everybody likes him because we had Congressman Davis on earlier, and, he's not a Gates fan because he thinks he's just all, talk. But yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I want somebody that's up there fighting, and I feel like he's there fighting. So
and what he's fighting for is what's called regular order. I've talked to him about this before. He wants us to get back to passing budgets the way the Congress is supposed to do it. They're talking about a continuing resolution, a whole year-long continuing, because it's coming up here in 2 weeks.
Yes, and I wanted to talk about you with that.
2 weeks.
That story, because that is so frustrating. I mean, how we just aren't we just kicking that can down the road, and we have to deal with it?
Right,
I'm over it.
10 years.
I mean,
we've been
we
kicking
pay
the can
these
down the
people.
Road. They haven't done a budget.
We pay these people to represent you and me, and then of course we're always like, especially when you're, paid by the government. If you have a job, you're in the military, or you're a civilian supporting the military, people are always on pins and needles. Am I going to be able to pay my car payment, and my rent? And so I don't, and they're always like, we're going to cover it. Don't worry. But it's cringeworthy, and nobody should have to worry that you're not going to get paid for your job. And yet they can't figure it out, John.
Well, that's just it. They complain about the agencies, taking and just doing whatever they want to do. And it's like, because the agencies are doing what they want to do because you won't pass a budget that forces them to do what you want to do legislatively. So that's the downside to CRs is the implementing law just basically says, do what you've been doing, and it's like, okay. And there's no pushback. One of the best ideas I heard, and I really wish we had a chance to talk to the congressman about this earlier, was the idea to do away with the Appropriations Committee and put the responsibility for budget appropriations back in the subcommittees, like Homeland Security. They do the Homeland Security budget. The House Armed Services Committee does the defense budget. See, right now, they do their stuff, policy-wise, and then the Appropriations Committee is the one that allocates the money. So it's like, you're not putting the responsibility where it belongs, as far as policy and money to go with that policy. So
I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it because we're constantly having to deal with this, talk of shutting down the government for years. I'm over it. I'm over it.
And that goes back to that rules committee that we were talking about earlier. That the rules committee could fix it by making the rules be that the subcommittees, set the appropriate budgets to go with the policies when they pass the policy implementation. But you can don't hold your breath on that one because you'll be dead long before that happens.
No, the world needs me still. But another top story was DeSantis hires back Christina Pashaw. Now that he suspended his run, and then he's, let's see, who else did he hire back? Oh, Brian Griffin back as his communication director, and then we've had James Othermeyer on. He was working as the chief of staff, and then he went to be the campaign manager, so he's back now too. So I will say he easily moves his people where he needs them to be, and that Christina Pichois, she's fun to follow on X,
she's a firebrand,
So
I really wish Trump would hire her to be press secretary.
Right.
And he understands what pushback is.
Yes. So, DeSantis still has 3 years in office to fight for Floridians, and now he's back where he needs to be right now. And hopefully, I don't know, if Trump wins, I still think DeSantis would be good in an administration as like a Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense or something. So
I think Tulsi Gabbard would be a great Secretary of Defense.
I know. I know. And she's a lieutenant colonel, so I don't know why. Yeah. And what's funny is if you follow her on Instagram, like she was just like wearing a uniform doing something, and she does videos, because normally when you're in the military uniform, you can't represent the military. You got to go through people like me or commanders, generals. Yeah. But she just does her own thing. So I
tell you that video of her out there on the shooting range. That's a
gosh,
hot video.
John. No, it was very good, very good. But
she wouldn't be the first military officer, reserve officer to have served that. I'm trying to remember the Secretary of the Navy. God, 20 years ago was a reserve
and Lindsey Graham was a reserve colonel and only recently retired, not that long ago. Yeah. So it can't be done. The other story, the one that keeps on giving, it's like the CRs. I'm over that, shutting down the government. Biden cancels over $1 billion in student loan debt for 153,000 borrowers. So once again, I'm like, he keeps doing this. Nobody ever gives me free money, John.
How does
I need some TJ Maxx money. I'm like, come on. How does he keep doing it? That's my question to you.
That's what I want to know, because the Supreme Court says he does not have the authority to do this. They actually went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says you have zero authority to cancel this. It has to be legislative action. And yet they ignore the Supreme Court decision.
I think it's again for the headline, because there's a quote here. Let's see. Education, or I guess it's not a direct quote. Secretary Miguel Cardona said Tuesday that once this goes through, the Biden administration will have canceled nearly $138 billion for almost 4 million borrowers. And it said last month the administration approved $5 billion in debt cancellation for about 74,000 borrowers. Who are these borrowers? Who are these, like medical loan? When they went to med school, nobody's. I don't know. My children, of course, had great scholarships, but there were still things you had to pay. Their college apartments and just all that goes with going to college. And it actually was a lot of money. So,
the best idea I heard is they ought to align the student loan cancellation with going after the colleges and forcing the colleges where these people wasted their money on whatever degree they got.
So maybe,
repaying
John,
part of that loan.
I always wanted to study at the Sorbonne in Paris, and my parents couldn't afford it. So maybe I'll go take a loan, and then Biden will pay for it for my Parisian trip. But
the thing about student loans, Veronica, and I learned this a long, long time ago. I knew people that these are military people, okay, with the VA, where the VA was paying, for your education and stuff, as part of the old VA benefits, and they were out taking out student loans. They didn't need the money, okay. VA was paying the tab for the college, and they were taking out maximum student loans and investing the money in the stock market. So it was because it was interest-free money.
Well, it is ridiculous, especially It's out of control, and like, how is he allowed to do this? You know what I'm saying? And maybe it's just the headline again.
But what they're doing, Veronica, it was like the housing forgiveness, that who was it, the CDC came up with, who had absolutely no authority to interfere in contracts, commercial real estate contracts during COVID, and the Supreme Court said as much. But they had to sue them, and it took 2 years before it got to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to tell them they don't have the authority to do what they had been doing for 2 years. So here you got the Biden people saying, "Oh, we're going to forgive these loans." They're going to get hauled back to the Supreme Court again. Okay, that's going to happen. Somebody with standing is going to go back and say they don't have the authority to do this, and the Supreme Court's going to tell them again, you don't have the authority to do this. And the way they do it, and I heard it kind of relates to what's going on in Texas. The Supreme Court writes a decision, and it's against specific words, okay? And the best parallel I heard was the razor wire in Texas. They got the Biden people went and got a decision from the court that says the federal government can come in and cut the razor wire. Okay, so Texas changes the name from razor wire to barbed wire. So that court finding no longer applies.
I did see that. It's so stupid.
It was razor wire, not barbed wire. And that's the game they play. And so you have to sue them again. Go back to court to get this thing slapped down because they changed 2 words in it and tried it again. And that's been the Biden's and Obama's modus operandi. I've got a pen and a phone. That's exactly what they're doing.
Well, nobody gives me free TJ Maxx money, so come on, bring it.
I know.
I'm ready.
I could use a new tractor. Somebody wants to give me a tractor.
No, please. Well, the other thing that happened this week was Tuesday, there was the lead up that Nikki Haley's having a press conference. Nikki Haley. Oh my gosh, she's going to drop out, John, she's dropping out. I think she's dropping out. And then what was it? No, I was like, I have this Veronica Live airsick bag that travels with me. And, so here we go. I was like, hurl, because it was just a commercial for Nikki Haley that I'm in it to win it, and the article in the afterburner says she's showing tenacity that is an important trait in a president. Poke my eyes out. Oh my gosh.
My God. What amazed me was the number of press people that were pissed off.
Yeah.
Over this, over being manipulated by her.
It was a commercial. It was a commercial. And I'm so sick of her sound bites and her voice and like Tulsi Gabbard, I probably could listen to all day. And that event I went to in September, she spoke literally for 45 minutes and you were mesmerized the entire time. So
well, the more that Haley it talks and is on the air, the less I like her. And the more she appears to be ill prepared to be president. I mean, she's just shooting herself in the foot, which is fine with me because it's going to destroy her. After today, after she loses in South Carolina, she'll probably characterize it as a win. I'm sure, remember in Nevada, she lost to none of the above. Okay. And characterize that as a win. I came in second. None of the above.
What was interesting, I didn't realize that she had put Tim Scott in when he was senator. So, and now he's full on Trump, and that's the other story in the stack. That back to another story. Team Trump mocks entitled Haley stunt presser. She's going to drop down to kiss ass when she quits. So love that quote because they've had enough too. But yeah, she's getting no role in this administration. I mean, exactly maybe right. dog capture, which came out.
Time of day.
The Biden's German Shepherd had actually bit 25 people. Before they got rid of that damn dog, which these people are so entitled and sick and think that your German Shepherd can go around biting people and that's okay. The rule is one bite, a dog is gone. And can you imagine one of the guy, the Wounded Warriors that I was really, enthralled by had been a canine handler, and he said he worked mostly at night and stuff. And so Colonel West asked him, "How many times have you been bit?" And he worked with there's different German shepherds. There's all these different kind of cousins to the German shepherd. So he'd had them all. And he's like, 12 times. And he goes, one of them caused nerve damage in my hand because they consider themselves alpha males. And so they're kind of crazy dogs. So, yeah, and here's a handler dealing with this dog every day, and he got bit. He did say his favorite one ever was a female one named Polly that could just jump and fences and was just so dedicated to him. And it was very interesting because he said that they can work for like 15 years before they're retired. So I didn't know that. I thought it was a shorter cycle. But back to Nikki Haley. What a con job, for free advertising on all the news networks.
Funded by Democrats. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. What she's getting her money from Democrats. Okay. Now what this is? You remember Rush when Hillary Clinton was running against Obama, and Rush started I'm trying to remember the name of the operation. But
I know what was it? It was so good. Was it Operation Chaos? What was it called?
Change your registration to Democrat and vote.
Yeah,
for
let me
Hillary.
find what it was called. It was so freaking funny. Oh my gosh, what was it called? That was so.
That's what we're getting. We're getting that operation done to us this time around.
I can't find the name. It was good, but. Trump was on Laura Ingraham this week too, and
that was a great interview. I watched that whole thing.
Yeah, he was great, And then the big takeaway, is who's on the VP list. So, they're saying that Ramaswamy, DeSantis, Tim Scott, Kristi Noem, Tulsi Gabbard, and Byron Donalds are on the list. And I think when I look at that list, because I don't think DeSantis and Trump get along, so no. Tim Scott to me doesn't do it for me. Kristi Noem now has had the scandal with potentially having an affair with and I don't know if it's a hit job or not, but it's
a hit job.
Okay. With
they're trying to knock her down because they know she's going to smoke them.
Well, Ramaswamy's too new for me in politics, even though he's great at the art of speaking. Yeah. I think out of all of them, and then Tulsi Gabbard, but can you have a Dem when we're a pro-life culture? And then Byron Donalds, he's been making the national circuit routinely, and he's more not like a Gates that fires people up and people think, oh my gosh, Gates is crazy. So if I had to choose, I think I might choose Byron Donalds. I might do that.
I don't think so. The one person that was not there and was Stefanik out of New York.
Oh, I love her. Actually, now that you said that.
She's pretty high up on the list as far as I know.
Okay. She's not on the Laura Trump list. I'm with you because after I saw her take out Dr. Gay from Harvard and, she was kick-ass. And then people not on this list is like Carrie Lake. But, I don't know. Kind of I might be done with her.
Well, going through Ramaswamy will get a cabinet position if he wants one.
He'd be great taking over for Buttigieg.
Oh, wouldn't that be fabulous?
Oh, my gosh. I think he might be really good at that job, actually, as a businessman.
And I've heard him say DeSantis for defense secretary. I don't really like that. I don't think DeSantis will take defense secretary. I don't think DeSantis is going to be involved in a Biden administration or a Trump administration. Tim Scott, I think, Kristi Noem, and Gwen Stefanik. I think those are the three real candidates. The rest of them.
Okay, so Tim Scott, who did you say? Okay, Tim Scott.
Kristi Noem.
Oh, Kristi Noem. And she's always on Fox News, and she has those commercials about her state. I mean, I have to say, until the supposed affair thing, I was always in love with her, and she's taken on the Biden administration. She's right. Taking them on.
I think that was all innuendo and a hit job by the media to try to knock her brand down. And you know, one of the
And
things
she's
that
still
Drew
out there nationally. I mean,
Right.
she's still out there talking.
Well, it's like, you know, Drew was talking about Tulsi Gabbard, right? And he says she's got the it factor. Okay.
Yeah, she does.
Sarah Palin had the it factor, and that's what you don't hear that talked about a lot in politics. And I think Kristi Noem has the it factor.
Well,
Tim
it's
Scott
sort of
doesn't
funny.
Stefanik doesn't have it.
The state attorney for Arizona, I saw in an interview, and because that illegal killed that woman in New York, and now it's in Arizona, right. and this woman, she just was not. She was hard to look at, and there was no it factor. You know what I'm saying? So here she is on national news, and she looks terrible, and no makeup in her outfit, and so you have to. I mean, I hate to say it, but in these positions, you need to be visually pleasing, and part of that is putting makeup on and having nice clothing, and because you're going to be out there representing. And it's sort of like when I was in the military as a protocol officer and public affairs officer, the whole world always sees you. You better have that crease in your shirt. Back then we shined our boots when we wore boots, because everybody was looking at you. So no. Yeah, I think Kristi Noem is strong, and she's great at talking. She would never mess up like Kamala can't even get a damn soundbite out, and she's a beautiful woman. So yeah, as long as that story's not true, I'm there with you.
She's got experience. She's a governor too, which in the experience.
And she's told Biden to take a hike. I forgot what it was, the 4th of July. Was it during COVID? People couldn't gather for fireworks, and she's like, "No, we're gathering."
Yep. So she's got the executive management experience, which the rest of those, except for Ron DeSantis, the rest of them don't have any executive management experience. And that, to me, that's what, like Byron Donalds. I like him a lot. I just don't think he's anywhere near qualified.
Well, because when you are a governor, you're handling budgets and infrastructure issues, and
you're dealing with the legislator, the House, the Senate. You're dealing in compromising and trying to get legislation moved.
You're dealing with the president telling you what to do, and you're telling him to take a hike. So no, I think that's good. Well, the last story I wanted to talk about with you out of our afterburner stack was the pronoun story with the 90-year-old volunteer, John. Do you want to lead with that one? I mean, the woman's 90 years old.
And she's been volunteering for, what was it?
For years.
30 years.
I think it was so long. Over 60 years. 60
years. 60 years. Yeah.
A 90-year-old woman. Just picture a cute 90-year-old woman volunteering for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society for 60 years.
Right. So first off, she's a volunteer. Okay, she doesn't get paid anything. She's doing this because she wants to stay active and stay in contact with people, and she believes in the MS mission, the Multiple Sclerosis Society's mission. And she was trying. She doesn't understand all this woke garbage. She doesn't understand pronouns. She's from
I don't understand them, and I read articles about them every day.
Right, but she's from a generation where men were men and women were women, okay? There was no such thing as a trans whatever, And all she was trying to do was asking them, I don't know how to use these pronouns. Can somebody help me? And they fired her.
They fired her, stupid.
Over
wokeness. So stupid.
Another DEI, and as far as I read this, and it's like Multiple Sclerosis Society. You will never see a dime from me ever, 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 ever again. Not going to happen.
Well, and it's happened to all of us. You meet someone, and I don't know, so I try not to use any pronouns. Thank you. I say ma'am or sir. Now I don't say anything. So it's gone to such an extreme. And especially like if it's a customer service thing, I always say, thank you, thank you, ma'am. No, I don't say it anymore. And I can't even imagine a 90-year-old that doesn't even understand it at all because it's gone so crazy. I just hope this pendulum swings back. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of this too. It's out of control.
Here's the MS Society. We are dedicated to building a diverse and inclusive movement. where everybody has equitable access to care, connections,
Oh my
and
gosh,
support.
I'm so sick of DEI. I'm sick of it.
This is so woke.
Because it used to be like men and women and equal rights, and we're moving forward together, and now it's so crazy. I don't know. You're a they. I'm confused too. And that's how a good distinguisher, if somebody's a liberal, they have their damn pronouns on their signature block. I'm not putting my pronoun on my signature block. And Veronica's a girl name, John.
Well, I'm a little more coarse on when somebody says, "What's your pronouns?" It's something like the first one starts with F and the second part starts with Y. Okay?
You're a little salty, aren't you?
Well, when you get old, you can do that.
Oh my gosh!
Plus,
well,
I'm a sailor, so sailors can do
yeah.
that too.
Oh well, we do have to talk about your political cartoon. Oh my goodness. Well, anyways, I think the one, because I'm so over Nikki Haley, and it's Nikki Haley. I guess is that supposed to be, she has her armor on from back in the day, her suit of armor?
Yeah, she's a knight, on a quest.
So she thinks she's a knight. And it says Nikki 2024. And she says, "'Tis but a scratch." And there's a man holding a sword that says GOP voters. And I guess he sliced off her arms because they're bleeding. And then the other sword said globalism. So is that the George Soros sword?
And she has no legs either.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and then people have gone crazy because your other political cartoon is hysterical, because Trump came out with these kind of like a Michael Jordan high top, and they're going for $300. And I've had a couple people send me "Veronica, are you buying these?" And I'm like, I don't wear high tops. No, that's bad fashion, people.
And it's sold out, so you can't buy them anyway.
No, you probably could on eBay for 5 times the price, but so it has Trump, and he's going up to dunk the ball, and it says he's wearing his sneakers, Trump's gold sneakers and other political footwear. And then it has Nikki Haley, and she's wearing the red slippers, clicking them, click, click. There's no place like the White House. Okay, honey, you are definitely going to go back to Oz. We're done with you. And then, oh my gosh. And then the Joe Biden is in a big shoe, and it says the incredible shrinking shoe. And then, of course, they've got Putin's concrete shoes for political opponents. And he's about to throw some concrete into the water, probably with a dead body in it, But that encompasses the entire week, John. And
yep.
If you saw the tweet with Pelosi, who is spry and Energizer Bunny like no one you've ever known. And I've always said she's my inspiration, because she joined politics at 44, and here she is at 81, and she's still kicking ass. Wrong team, but I like to be an ass kicker for my team, because I've had those conversations a lot lately about how important it is to be conservative, and how we have to fight the fight, and why we do this radio show every week, because I could just roll over, because it's work for you. Help put the afterburner notes together, and I'm trying to get guests on. Plus we're researching, we're 24/7 reading news, listening to shows. Just think what my dream always, I say, and I've told you before, is to have a staff so we could have those news clips and stuff. So it's work, but we're fighting the fight for America, because if you and I don't stand up and do it, who will? Who will?
And to have a good quality show, you have to put in the work, That's all there is to it. And that's what makes success. That's the American success story. Put in the work, and you'll succeed.
Yeah,
and that's where we're at.
It's been great. And again, I want to thank, Colonel Alan West for it took a while for me to get him here, because he's a busy man, and he's paid normally. For when he came the first time I saw him, he was in Walton, where he was paid to be a guest speaker. I invited him, paid him to come. He gave me a cut rate, because back in the day when I had him come 9 years ago, we were a small conservative veterans club, and but he's paid big bucks to go speak. And like this weekend, he was flying to Denver to do their GOP dinner. but he came no cost to the organization and was there for the veterans, for dinner, for lunch, for another dinner, and spoke. And it was absolutely beautiful. So he truly is walking the walk, fighting for the Constitution and his fellow veteran. And I can't thank him enough for coming to the Panhandle, John. I'm just blown away.
Good event, and I'm glad it went off well. So.
But we've got guests. Next week we'll be back on Veronica Live. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X. Go find my blue check mark. And I've gotten 30 followers this week, so it's excellent. I need more time to put comments out there. And then the podcast is on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Podcast Addict. I'm on YouTube now. That was work, but it goes to YouTube. LinkedIn, I post a lot of stuff, True Social, and Twitter. So we are out there. And thanks, John, for being my stellar wingman as usual.
All right, Veronica, have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. God bless everyone. Be back soon.